Chapter 136. It had to be said that number 2 was a very qualified bodyguard. He was good at fighting, hunting, and barbecuing. A rabbit and a pheasant were roasted by him until they were bright and fragrant. Ning Xuema's appetite was greatly stimulated and she was drooling. She was really hungry. Number 2 tilted his head and saw her sparkling eyes staring at the pheasant. He didn't know why, but he felt a surge of warmth in his heart. A strong urge to protect her, to cherish her, and to give her the best things in the world rose in his heart. He tore off the roasted drumstick and gave it to her. "You eat first." He secretly used his psychokinesis to warm the drumstick to room temperature. "Thank you." Ning Xuema's eyes curved as she thanked him. She took the drumstick and began to eat. You're welcome." Number 2 was not used to being thanked. "What else do you want to eat?" "I'll continue to roast for you. Chicken wings, rabbit legs, and the meat on its back," Ning Xuema casually said. "Good. Just wait, it'll be ready in a while." Number 2 immediately went to roast the rabbit. "You don't want to eat a little?" Ning Xuema raised the drumstick in her hand. "No, it won't be too late for me to eat later. Miss, please enjoy yourself first." Number 2's hands moved quickly. Suddenly he seemed to have sensed something. His hands paused and he looked into the depths of the forest. "Smells good. It seems that we're not the only ones on this mountain. There are people from other sects as well." A clear male voice came from the forest. "Let's see who it is." A cold female voice followed. "This person's barbecue skills are not bad. I'm also hungry." "Not bad, not bad. We also hunted some wild game." 4 young men and women walked out from the depths of the forest. There were 2 men and 2 women. They looked to be around 20 years old. The women were wearing white clothes and white skirts. They looked like fairies. The men's white robes fluttered in the wind. Their collars were embroidered with a bird feather pattern. It was obvious that they were from the same sect. They should be disciples of some sect who came here to gain experience. Ning Xuema glanced at them and couldn't help but rub her eyebrows. This white dress was indeed beautiful, but was it really suitable for training in the deep mountains and forests? "Aren't you afraid of being targeted by the beasts? Aren't you afraid of being stained with dust?" He really wanted to be elegant and not care about his life. The figure of the ancestor flashed through her mind. His white robes were like the clouds and the moon. Comparing him to the snow and frost seemed to stain his color. Could these people be the ancestor's disciples? This style of dressing is very similar. Oh, that's not right. The robes of the Sun-Moon sect's disciples were embroidered with cloud patterns, not bird wings. Number 2, who was roasting meat, frowned slightly when he saw the faces of these people. The 4 people naturally saw the 2 people eating the barbecued meat and were surprised. They didn't expect that the person who could enter the 5th mountain would be a little girl who looked about 10 years old. As for the person barbecuing the meat, "Number 2, why are you here?" Among the 4 people, the coldest girl recognized Number 2's identity. Number 2 could only cup his hands. "Miss Zhong. So it was an acquaintance?" Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. Number 2 didn't have a name? This Miss Zhong actually called him Number 2. "Who is this little girl?" Miss Zhong sized up Ning Xuema with her sharp eyes. She couldn't tell who this little girl was. Chapter 137. Who is this little girl? Miss Zhong's sharp eyes scanned Ning Xuema from head to toe. For a moment she couldn't tell who this little girl was, nor did she see anything special about her. Her tone was condescending. Number 2 was stunned and also looked at Ning Xuema. He didn't know if he should reveal Ning Xuema's identity. Ning Xuema smiled slightly and lazily said, "We're just strangers who met by chance. In the blink of an eye we'll go our separate ways. Why ask for my name?" "How dare you? My 8th senior sister is giving you face by asking for your name. How dare you be so unappreciative?" The round-faced girl in white who came with Miss Zhong shouted. What an arrogant girl. She had to answer honestly just because they asked her? What kind of twisted logic was this? Ning Xuema was too lazy to pay attention to her. She turned to Number 2 and urged, "I still want to eat the rabbit leg. Let's roast it ourselves." Miss Zhong and the others were completely ignored. The round-faced girl was obviously someone who often walked sideways. She raised her eyebrows and was about to get angry again when Miss Zhong waved her hand. "Forget it, 9th sister. Why lower yourself to the same level as a child?" She turned to Number 2 and asked, "Number 2, how is your prince?" "Very good. Thank you for your concern. No need to be so polite. When you go back and see your prince, send my regards to him on Rushuang's behalf." "Yes, I'll definitely pass on your message." Zhong Rushuang nodded and said, "Number 2, your roasted game is pretty good. Help us roast it too." 15th brother, Give the game in your hands to him to take care of. One of the handsome young men in white nodded his head and placed the meat in his hands in front of number 2. Number 2 was stunned for a moment and frowned slightly, but he still nodded, okay. 8th senior sister, who is he? The round-faced girl asked curiously. He's the 6th prince's personal bodyguard. I've seen him once in the crown prince's residence, so I recognize him, Zhong Rushuang replied. Oh, so he's a bodyguard. The round-faced girl spoke quickly and showed a trace of disdain. She immediately stopped being polite. I want to eat fully roasted. I want to eat the one that's covered in mud and then dried and depilate. The 4 of them each said what they wanted to eat, obviously treating number 2 as a servant. Those who could come here to train were not ordinary people. Their telekinesis was at least a 6th-order master. These people came here, their white clothes were not stained with much dust, and they did not look embarrassed. Obviously their martial arts were not low. This Zhong Rushuang had also entered the crown prince's residence. Could it be that she was an acquaintance of Ji Yunhuang? Ning Xuema was on the run. She felt that she should keep a low profile and not cause any trouble. But these people's attitudes were really annoying. She actually dared to bully her people in front of her. She was the head of the Secret Service in her previous life and was usually very protective of her subordinates. She could scold and beat her subordinates when they did something wrong, but she couldn't tolerate others criticizing them. Right now, she had already subconsciously treated number 2 as her subordinate brother, and this group of people was shouting at him like this, "Don't you have arms and legs? Roast whatever you want to eat yourself." Ning Xuema's face tensed up as she spoke. What a bold little girl. We're letting him roast meat because we think highly of him. Do you know who we are? The round-faced girl clearly had a fiery temper and exploded at the slightest provocation. Ning Xuema smirked. I don't care who you are. I only know that he's not your servant. There's no reason for him to serve you for free. Even if he agreed, you should at least thank him. Don't you have any manners? Chapter 138. The round-faced girl choked at Zhong Rushuang's question. He's the 6th prince's bodyguard and we're the crown prince's junior brothers and sisters, Zhong Rushuang said flatly. So, we can treat the 6th prince's bodyguard as a servant. Are you satisfied with this answer? Ning Xuema's eyes flashed. They were actually Ji Yunhuang's juniors? Then they were also from the Sun Moon sect? Why didn't they wear the same clothes? Miss Ning, they are disciples of the Bright Reverend School. Their psychokinesis is above the 8th rank of the human realm. We can't afford to offend them. Bear with it. Number 2 suddenly transmitted his voice to Ning Xuema. Bright Reverend School? Ning Xuema quickly searched her mind for the origins of this school. Suddenly, a legend floated into her mind. According to the legend, 300 years ago, the ancestor had made an exception and accepted a female disciple named Yi Qingwan. Later, for unknown reasons, she was expelled from the school and refused to acknowledge it. That female disciple was also a strong person, so she founded the Bright Reverend School. Bright reverence actually meant worshipping the sun and moon, implying that she was from the Sun Moon sect. These people claimed to be Ji Yunhuang's juniors. Could it be that they were the direct disciples of the Bright Reverend School's founder, Yi Qingwan? If Yi Qingwan was still alive, she would be over 300 years old. Her disciples, on the other hand, were very young. Miss Ning, don't be fooled by their appearance. They are actually over 70 years old. It's just that they have a technique to retain their youthful looks. Number 2 continued to transmit his voice to her. They were actually so old. Psychokinesis was really a mysterious thing. Ning Xuema once again yearned for psychokinesis. Which girl didn't want to retain their youthful looks? Even Ning Xuema was no exception. Only when your psychokinesis breaks through the 1st rank of the Earth realm can you truly retain your youthful looks. They haven't broken through the Earth realm yet. The reason why they can retain their youthful looks is because their master has a special technique to retain their youthful looks. He also taught it to them. Number 2 continued to explain. Ning Xuema nodded. She felt that she had gained a lot of knowledge. What are you two whispering about? The round-faced girl's face was full of suspicion. There. Isn't that a flying dragon centipede? A white-robed youth suddenly pointed at the thorny thicket and shouted. Like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples, the other 3 immediately looked in the direction he was pointing. Zhong Rushuang's eyes lit up. Her usually cold and arrogant face also showed surprise. As expected, we can complete the task that Master gave us. So the long howl we heard just now was indeed from it. I told you, but you didn't believe me. Fortunately, you came here to take a look. This thing has always grown on the 6th summit. Who would have thought that it would actually be found on the 5th summit? We're lucky. That's right. There must be a 6th grade fire crystal in its body. Let's take it back and complete the mission. The 4 of them spoke one after another, and actually treated the flying dragon centipede as their possession. I'll go get the crystal. A white-robed youth volunteered. Just as he was about to fly up, Ning Xuema successfully stopped him with a sentence. This centipede was killed by us. Did you ask for our permission to take it? Zhong Rushuang glanced at Ning Xuema, and then her gaze fell on number 2. Number 2, your martial arts have improved. You can actually hunt the flying dragon centipede alone. It was obvious that she didn't take Ning Xuema seriously. She also didn't expect that Ning Xuema would take the lead in killing the flying dragon centipede. She changed the topic again. This flying dragon centipede is something that my master needs. Give it to us. I'll definitely explain it to your master later. Chapter 139. This. Number 2 glanced at Ning Xuema and saw that she was looking at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. His courage was boosted. My apologies, forgive me for not being able to comply. This thing was Ning Xuema's prey, so he had to protect it for her. Although the flying dragon centipede was a monster of the 6th peak, there were very few of them. Even if they wandered around the 6th peak for half a month, they might not be able to find one. Moreover, the fire crystal inside its body was extremely pure, comparable to an 8th grade crystal. It had a price but no market. Even if they wanted to buy it, there was nowhere to buy it. If Ning Xuema could offer this crystal to the imperial court, perhaps the emperor would pardon her for running away from the marriage and give her other rewards. Zhong Rushuang's pretty face sank. You've got guts, daring to refuse me? In this world, not many people dared to refuse the request of a direct descendant of the Bright Reverence sect. Even the disciples of the Sun Moon sect would give them some face, but this little guard in front of her actually dared to say, no? My apologies, the fire crystal inside this flying dragon centipede is something that our master wants. Without his personal agreement, forgive me for not being able to comply. Please forgive me, Fairy Zhong. Everyone's skills are profound and you're all dragons and phoenixes among men. Relying on your own strength, you should be able to hunt the flying dragon centipede and report back. Number 2 had no choice but to use Ji Yunhao's name. He couldn't mention Ning Xuema, lest he bring a fatal disaster upon her. Ning Xuema glanced at number 2. Although this guard had a baby face, he was a serious person. She didn't think that he would be able to say something so logical and not offend anyone. Zhong Rushuang paused, her eyes flashing with a hint of sternness, but the corners of her mouth curved slightly. All right, since it's something that the 6th prince wants, we'll go hunt it ourselves. Let's go. Senior sister. The round-faced girl couldn't help but call out, clearly not wanting to give up. Let's go. Zhong Rushuang only said one sentence. The other 3 people's faces were filled with anger, but they couldn't disobey. They glared angrily at Ning Xuema and number 2, then stood up to leave. Brothers and sisters, please wait. Ning Xuema stood up. Zhong Rushuang turned around and glanced at her. What else do you want? Ning Xuema had an apologetic look on her face. We're very sorry that we can't give you the flying dragon centipede crystal. How about you let us grill a few more game for you as an apology? Her voice was sweet, her eyes were clear, and she called out to them intimately. This made these people who were close to 70 years old but still maintained a youthful appearance feel very comfortable. Moreover, they were really hungry and they were too lazy to roast anything themselves. More importantly, it was difficult to roast it with such perfect color, aroma, and taste. Little girl, you're quite sensible. All right, we'll eat your meal to make you feel at ease. Zhong Rushuang and the other 3 sat down. Number 2 was grumbling in his heart. It wasn't that he didn't want to roast meat for these people, but he had finally managed to get rid of these fiends. Now that Ning Xuema had asked them to stay, he didn't know what unforeseen events would happen if they stayed. The little girl knew their identities. Was she afraid of offending them, so she used this as a gesture of goodwill? He couldn't guess Ning Xuema's thoughts, so he could only go and clean up the game. Ning Xuema ran over and rolled up her sleeves. I'll help you with it. It'll be faster too. Don't let these brothers and sisters starve. Number 2 didn't want her to interfere. He was about to refuse and ask her to go and rest first. However, Ning Xuema smiled at him and winked. Number 2 didn't know what she was up to, so he just let her be. Chapter 140. Zhong Rushuang and the others didn't suspect anything else. They were only a little afraid of the ancestors' children. They didn't care about the other children. What's more, this child spoke so clearly that she was a little girl. Since she was with number 2, It was obvious that she wasn't one of the ancestors' children. What else did they have to be afraid of? One of the youths in white even joked with them. "Number 2, this little girl isn't your little wife, is she? Her little face is quite handsome and her little hands are quite skillful." Number 2 stiffened and subconsciously wanted to refute. Ning Xuema turned around and glared at that person, whispering, "No way." She denied it, but her little face turned red. This was simply a disguised admission. The few people looked at each other and laughed in their hearts. This little girl was still too inexperienced. Zhong Rushuang had been a little suspicious and guarded against her, but at this moment, that little bit of vigilance disappeared. The game was roasted very quickly. Just as the few people had expected, it looked, smelled, and tasted good. It whetted their appetite. The round-faced girl was anxious and grabbed a roasted rabbit to start eating. "Wait." Zhong Rushuang stopped her. Out of nowhere, she took out a silver needle and pricked the rabbit's body. She then pulled it out to take a look. The silver needle was as bright as before. Only then was she relieved and handed it to the round-faced girl. She was obviously very suspicious. She tested all the game that was passed to them with her silver needle one by one. Only after confirming that it wasn't poisonous did she feel relieved to eat it. Like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds, it only took a moment for the few wild animals to be reduced to a pile of bones. Zhong Rushuang stood up. "Thank you for the game. We should go." She signaled to the others with her eyes. The others also stood up and hastily bid farewell to Ning Xuema and number 2 before walking into the dense forest in the distance. Ning Xuema was still waving enthusiastically at them from behind. "Brothers and sisters, take care. I hope you get what you want soon." When did this little girl become so eager to curry favor? Number 2 couldn't help but look at her again, only to find that she was rapidly writing on the ground. "Be careful of their sneak attack. Retreat to the brambles." Number 2 was stunned. And it was at this moment that an unforeseen event occurred. 4 streaks of golden light accompanied by 4 silhouettes flew towards Ning Xuema and Xiao Luo. Like a thunderbolt or a lightning bolt, it struck the vital points of Ning Xuema and Xiao Taiying. Obviously, it was a fatal move right from the start. It didn't give them any chance to survive. Fortunately, with Ning Xuema's warning, the 2 of them were prepared. The 2 of them quickly retreated as if they were in a panic, and directly jumped into the thorny undergrowth. Zhong Rushuang also did not expect that the 4 people's joint attack would not work. When she raised her head to look, she saw Ning Xuema and number 2 standing on top of the thorny undergrowth, looking at them. The little girl seemed to be quite angry. She opened her eyes wide and asked, "Why do you want to kill us?" Since her purpose had already been exposed, Zhong Rushuang decided not to hide it any longer. "Because you must die." The crystal pillar in the flying dragon centipede's body was theirs. However, they didn't want to become enemies with the imperial family of Chongkong country, so they chose to silence them to prevent future trouble. The round-faced girl sneered and added, "Originally we wanted to give you a quick death because you helped us roast meat. We didn't expect you to be so tactless. Don't blame us for being merciless. If you know what's good for you, then you too should stop your pointless struggle. Obediently accept your death." The young man in white also smiled proudly. Chapter 141. If you kill yourselves, we can still leave your corpses intact. Who knows, maybe we'll even bury you properly if we're in a good mood so that your corpses won't be exposed in the wilderness. Another young man also laughed happily. The 4 of them began to approach the thorny thicket step by step. "You're too much of a bully." Ning Xuema stomped her foot, but she forgot that she was standing on thorny thickets. Her foot missed a step and she fell down with a cry. "Miss Ning." Number 2 hurriedly flew down to catch her. The thorny thicket was as tall as a person. When the 2 jumped down, they disappeared without a trace. Zhong Rushuang narrowed her eyes. Could it be that there was a trap in this thicket? She sneered in her heart. No need to chase after them. Use the flying locust formation to finish them off. She took the lead and the golden light in her hand swept towards the thorny thicket. The 4 of them were obviously used to working together. They cooperated well and attacked the thorny thicket from 4 different directions. The 4 of them were very strong. These thick and hard thorny thickets were like paper under their attacks. Branches were cut off one by one. The thorny thickets danced in the air and juice splashed everywhere. Like a lawnmower, they advanced towards the place where Ning Xuema and number 2 had fallen. Zhong Rushuang's lips curved into a cruel smile. The place where Ning Xuema and the others were hiding was where the flying dragon centipede's corpse was. They still needed to get the crystal. No matter what, they had to clean up the thorny thickets around them so that it would be convenient for them to make a move. Now they had to silence them and clean up the scene. After she killed number 2 and the little girl, she would use the corpse dissolving powder to dissolve their bodies. This way they would be able to do it without anyone knowing. The 4 of them were eager to accomplish their mission and did not care about the thorny thickets around them. In just a moment they attacked the place where the flying dragon centipede was lying. Zhong Rushuang could already see the corner of number 2's robe. My head hurts." The round-faced girl suddenly cried out and hugged her head. "This bastard, he's taking the opportunity to be lazy again." Zhong Rushuang cursed under her breath. She was about to scold him when she suddenly felt a sharp object hitting her head. The pain was unbearable. She couldn't help but let out a low cry and subconsciously touched her head. It was as if countless sharp thorns had drilled into her head in a split second and were stabbing her in all directions. It was so painful that she let out another blood-curdling scream. Her hands trembled and her legs went limp as she fell to the ground. The other 3 didn't fare any better. Like her, they rolled to the ground. It was obvious that they were in extreme pain. They could no longer care about their elegant and graceful appearances as they rolled around and screamed miserably. His voice was mournful and shrill, causing the surrounding birds to fly away in disarray. Ning Xuema and number 2 emerged from the thicket of brambles. The 2 of them had been hiding behind the flying dragon centipede just now. With the flying dragon centipede's body as a shield, the 2 of them were unharmed. Number 2 looked at the 4 people who were rolling on the ground, and then looked at Ning Xuema, who was standing there with her arms crossed and a smile on her face. What happened to them? Poisoned. Ning Xuema spat out 2 words and looked coldly at them, struggling and crying. Number 2 was puzzled. He had never seen Ning Xuema use poison. Could it be that she had released the poison in the thicket? That didn't seem right either. It didn't make sense that those people had been poisoned, but he, who was also in the thicket, didn't feel anything. However, when he saw that the 4 of them were lying down, he breathed a sigh of relief. If they really wanted to fight, he and Ning Xuema were no match for them at all. They could only wait for death. Now they had escaped disaster. Chapter 142. You poisoned them? He couldn't help but ask. Ning Xuema's lips curled slightly. What do you think? She kicked the ball back to him. Number 2 finally shut his mouth and stopped asking. Stupid girl, what the hell are you doing? Give us the antidote. Zhong Rushuang endured the pain and shouted. Does it hurt? Ning Xuema charmingly stood at the top of the brambles. She was trembling, but she didn't fall. Little girl, if you give us the antidote, we'll let bygones be bygones. One of the youths in white had already rolled into a gray one. He also knew that this wasn't the time to be stubborn, so he began to try to appease them. Give you the antidote so that you can kill us to silence us? Are you out of your mind, or do you think I'm out of my mind? Ning Xuema was still smiling, but the words she said were infuriating. We won't kill you. Just now. We were just joking with you to scare you and make you hand over the fire crystals. We didn't really want to kill you. Zhong Rushuang endured the pain and tried to jump up several times, but the pain had already begun to spread from her forehead to her entire body. Wherever it went, it felt like knives and axes were cutting her. She couldn't even sit up, let alone jump up to take revenge. Is that so? Ning Xuema pursed her lips and smiled, rudely exposing her lie. Aren't you afraid that this matter will reach the crown prince's ears and that you won't be able to explain yourself to him? So you want to kill us to silence us, then destroy the evidence and be done with it? Zhong Rushuang's face turned pale. This little girl had guessed correctly. At this point she could only refuse to admit it. Little girl, you're wrong. It's not like that. We really didn't mean to harm you. If we really wanted to kill you, we would have done it when you were barbecuing. You didn't do it when you were barbecuing because you didn't know our real situation. You saw how the flying dragon centipede died at our hands, so you didn't know how powerful our martial arts were. You wanted to kill us in one shot, so you attacked when we were least prepared. Besides, you were really hungry and greedy for our cooking. Ning Xuema counted with her fingers. Zhong Rushuang's face turned even paler. She did not expect that her scheme would be so transparent in front of this little girl. She could actually see through it so thoroughly. TSK, it said that those who take advantage of others have a short mouth, and those who take advantage of others have a short hand. I see that your mouths aren't short, but your hands aren't short either. After eating and drinking other people's food, you kill them to silence them and steal their things. Is this the style of your bright reverence cult? How shameless. Zhong Rushuang was speechless. Even if she was thick-skinned, she still felt a little embarrassed after being exposed by this little girl in front of her. Little girl, how good are you? You poisoned the meat just now, didn't you? So, you've been scheming against us all along. Zhong Rushuang was not stupid. After thinking for a while, she realized something and could not help but retort. But she had tested it before eating it and it wasn't poisonous. Ah, you're not stupid. Ning Xuema giggled. However, you're only half right. I did put a kind of poison in the game you ate. This kind of poison isn't poison at all if you eat it alone. It's just a kind of seasoning. If you really left after eating it and didn't scheme against us, nothing would have happened. But you ate it and even schemed against us to kill us. The juice in the thorns is actually a kind of poison. This kind of poison isn't poison on its own, but when it's mixed with the poison I put in the game, it becomes an intestinal poison. Chapter 143. Zhong Rushuang. So that's how it is. This little girl's mind is so meticulous, what a sinister scheme. Number 2 also admired Ning Xuema very much. Originally, it was a battle of life and death, but he did not expect that she would be able to resolve it so easily without spilling blood. It seems that she had already seen through the conspiracy of these people at that time. How could such a small person have such keen observation skills? She was even more mature than him, a person who had been rolling on the edge of a knife all year round. But how should he deal with these people? These people were from Bright Reverend School. The sect master of Bright Reverend School was very protective of his disciples and all of them were arrogant and willful, not allowing anyone to humiliate them. If he killed them, the sect master would not let it go and would seek revenge for his disciples. Moreover, she was also able to communicate with yin and yang and knew the soul summoning technique. Even if he killed all of these people and destroyed their corpses, it would be useless. Yi Qingwan would summon the souls of his disciples to track down the murderer. At that time, if she chased him to the ends of the earth, he and Ning Xuema wouldn't be able to escape. Their deaths would be incomparably miserable. Moreover, what she killed wasn't only the body but also the soul. But if he let these people go once they turned around they would also counterattack. At that time he and Ning Xuema would still not be able to escape death. Kill he could not kill but keep he also could not keep. Number 2 was in a dilemma for a moment and he transmitted his concerns to Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema originally wanted to give them a taste of their own medicine and kill these people to silence them, but when she heard his concerns she frowned slightly. Soul summoning technique? This technique was really too hateful. She could kill people but she could not use a technique to disperse the souls of people. No wonder these people from Bright Reverend School dared to run rampant and no one dared to provoke them. It turned out that they had such an abnormal master, and that master was the disciple of the ancestor. It seemed that the ancestor was also abnormal. His own disciple was so tyrannical, did he not know how to clean up the sect? And I heard that Yi Qingwan was his only female disciple. Could it be that there was some unspeakable secret? Like the love between a master and a disciple in some Xinxia novels? The image of the ancestor's snow-white figure appeared in her mind. Tsk, he really looked like the cold master in the abusive relationship between master and disciple. He only took in one female disciple but expelled her from the sect. Then her love turned into hate and she became Abbess Miju. Tsk, what a melodramatic drama of love and hate, of not being able to get what one loves. After Yi Qingwan, the ice sculpture-like venerable overlord did not accept any female disciple and turned a blind eye to her actions. Could it be that he had promised her something and felt guilty about it? Ning Xuema glanced at the 4 people who were rolling around in pain and sweating profusely. The matter between the Di-Zun and his disciple had nothing to do with her. The people in front of her were the real trouble. How could she settle this peacefully? The round-faced girl screamed in pain, "Bitch! You're dead for sure this time. How dare you scheme against us? When I recover, I will skin you and pull out your tendons. I'll let you have a taste of what it's like to beg for death." Zhong Rushuang could clearly see number 2's hesitation and naturally knew what he was worried about. She took a deep breath and said, "If you know what's good for you, you'll cure our poison now and I won't make things difficult for you. We'll go our separate ways. If you're late, our enmity will be set. We'll definitely chase you to the ends of the earth." This condition was relatively tempting. Number 2 immediately looked at Ning Xuema. Chapter 144. Ning Xuema smiled faintly. "What do you think? If you cure us of the poison, we'll spare your lives." The white-robed youth was in a sorry state, but his tone was arrogant. In his heart he added, "I'll only torture you and turn you into human rods. We'll talk after you cure us of the poison." Another youth spoke up. All 4 of them were sweating profusely and were in a sorry state. "What should we do? Lady Ning, these 4 people are vengeful people." Number 2 transmitted his voice again, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Ning Xuema seemed to be in a difficult position as she thought about it, then sighed, Aya, this is really a dilemma. Let me think about it. Number 2, let's ignore them for now. We'll talk about it after we get the fire crystal. Yes. Number 2 also decided not to dwell on this difficult problem for the time being and went to kill the flying dragon centipede to get the crystal. Zhong Rushuang and the others were so angry that their noses almost went crooked. This damn girl could take her time to think, but they were being tortured here and they didn't want to wait a moment longer. The 4 of them were there. Some were threatening, some were tempting, some were cursing, some were red-faced and some were white-faced. They wanted to trick Ning Xuema into curing them of the poison first. Unfortunately, Ning Xuema didn't seem to have any intention of paying attention to them. She crossed her arms and excitedly watched number 2 retrieve the crystal. This flying dragon centipede had copper skin and iron bones. In order to peel off its skin and flesh, one had to start from a small hole in its abdomen. Then one had to peel it off bit by bit like tearing off iron. It was very time-consuming. Ning Xuema didn't seem to be impatient at all. She watched with great interest. On the other hand, every moment was torture for those few people. Cold sweat broke out all over their bodies, and the clothes on their bodies had already been rolled into a mess. After 2 hours, their willpower was finally defeated. They no longer dared to curse, only begging and crying. The round-faced girl even knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. 4 hours later, number 2 finally took out a blood-red crystal that was about 2 feet long from the flying dragon centipede's body. As soon as the crystal appeared, it flashed with a dazzling brilliance, illuminating the surroundings with a fiery red glow. The 4 of them were now rolling on the ground. They didn't even have the strength to beg for mercy. They were lying there like dead dogs. Number 2 was also sweating profusely. He wiped the fire crystal clean and handed it to Ning Xuema. Miss Ning, please put it away. Ning Xuema took it and looked at it, then threw it back to him. You can keep it. I don't need it. She was not interested in the crystal. Moreover, this thing was so heavy that it was too burdensome to carry. She still had to go up the mountain to pick herbs. Number 2 was speechless. He thought that Ning Xuema didn't know the value of this crystal. He couldn't help but say, Miss Ning, this crystal is extremely rare. With a little polishing, it will become a good tool to test fire psychokinesis. Moreover, cultivators with water attribute psychokinesis can use it to set up arrays during cultivation. It can also prevent them from going berserk. Fire and water mutually restrained each other. When a cultivator with water psychokinesis overcultivated, the yin energy in their body would be greatly increased. Only by using a fire attribute crystal to neutralize the yin energy would they be able to resolve this crisis. Looking at your psychokinesis, it should be of the water attribute. Ning Xuema glanced at him. Then I'll give it to you. Although this imperial bodyguard was Ji Yunhao's imperial bodyguard, his character was extremely loyal to his friends. He was also relatively straightforward and candid. Ning Xuema had always respected this kind of man. Moreover, he was currently her companion, so Ning Xuema didn't feel any heartache when she gave him the crystal. Chapter 145. Number 2 looked at the fire crystal in his hand, then looked at Ning Xuema. His eyes flickered. He thanked her and solemnly put away the fire crystal. He didn't say any more words of gratitude. Some favors needed to be engraved in his heart, not expressed verbally. Lady Ning, where are we going now? Zhu Yufeng to pick herbs. Ning Xuema replied. Hey Lady Ning, you help us detoxify the poison first. We're willing to help you fight. Zhu Yufeng has a guardian beast. You can't beat it? Zhong Rushuang forced herself to speak. Ning Xuema slowly walked over and squatted in front of her, looking at her. Are you planning to cut me into pieces after detoxifying the poison? No, definitely not. I'm willing to swear. Zhong Rushuang finally saw a glimmer of hope. How could she let it go? She hurriedly promised. All right, then make an oath. If you break the oath, then your master will never be forgiven by the ancestor, and will never be able to return to the Sun Moon sect. Number 2 interjected from the side. Zhong Rushuang's expression changed greatly. How can we implicate our master? If you don't have any intention of breaking the oath, why would you implicate your master? Number 2 didn't back down. Ning Xuema also smiled gently at the side. You don't even dare to swear such an oath. It's clear that you don't have any sincerity. Okay, I swear. I won't seek revenge on you too. If I break the oath, my master. Zhong Rushuang followed Ning Xuema's instructions and repeated the oath. The other 3 saw her swear, and in order to survive, they followed suit and swore the same oath. Number 2 let out a long sigh of relief. Lady Ning, detoxify them. They won't dare to break the oath. Ning Xuema also knew that the people of the Tianxi continent valued oaths the most. It was said that if an oath was broken, it would quickly be fulfilled. Thus, once the people here made an oath, they wouldn't break it again. Even if they had great grievances, they would have to let go. 2 hours later, Ning Xuema and number 2 were already on their way to Falling Flower Peak. Miss Ning, didn't you say you wanted to go to Vermilion Jade Peak? Number 2 was puzzled. The direction they were currently heading in was clearly the opposite direction. That was to fool those 4 people. Ning Xuema didn't even turn her head. Number 2 said. The 4 of them swore that they wouldn't seek revenge on us. Their martial arts aren't bad and they're willing to help us. It's a good idea to have them open a path for us. They only promised that they wouldn't seek revenge on us, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't come up with any bad ideas along the way. For example, they would deliberately lure some ferocious beasts to attack us, or deliberately bring us to some dangerous place. Even if we were really in danger, do you think they would reach out and save us? Rather than being on guard all the time, it's better to go our own way. Number 2 was stunned for a moment. He deeply felt that what Ning Xuema said was indeed reasonable, and didn't say anything else. Speaking of which, their master Yi Qingwan really knows the soul tracking technique? Ning Xuema was still a little doubtful. Actually, according to her temperament, when she subdued those 4 people, she wanted to kill them cleanly. She didn't want to rack her brains and expend all her energy to subdue them, so as to avoid any future troubles. However, Yi Qingwan's soul tracking technique did make her somewhat apprehensive. She was still very weak now, but that Yi Qingwan's martial arts had already reached Earth rank level 8. She had hundreds of disciples under her, and was already a powerful existence on this continent. Chapter 146. If such a person wanted to take Ning Xuema's life, Ning Xuema would have no chance to escape. Fighting against such a big boss when she was still very weak was undoubtedly like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, or an ant trying to shake a tree. It was too irrational. Number 2 nodded and told her a few stories about how Yi Qingwan used the soul tracking technique to find out the cause of her disciples' deaths and used cruel methods to take revenge. Every one of them was hair-raising and every one of them died very miserably. One of them was even a prince of a certain country. Because he accidentally killed a disciple of Bright Reverence sought revenge and burned him alive on the city wall. Even the emperor of that country was angry but didn't dare to say anything. Ning Xuema frowned slightly. It seemed that this Yi Qingwan was even more abnormal than that Abbess Miju. She was so tyrannical, yet the ancestor didn't care about her. It seemed that he had some kind of special feelings for her. How did Yi Qingwan get expelled by the ancestor? Number 2 shook his head. This is an old matter from 300 years ago. No one knows the specific reason. Sun Moon Sect and Bright Reverence both kept their mouths shut. I only heard that the ancestor had taken her as a disciple for 3 years and then ordered her to be expelled. He never saw her again. Ning Xuema listened to the gossip with great interest. Then how do you know that she wants to return to the sect? After all, she has already become the founder of a sect. How good is it to be a founder? Being someone's disciple and being restricted and controlled? Number 2 sighed. Senior Yi wants to return to the Sun Moon sect. The entire Tianxi continent knows about it. Unfortunately, the ancestor doesn't want to let her go. He even refuses to see her. I heard that Senior Yi tried every method but still couldn't see him. This ancestor was really arrogant. It seemed that this Yi Qingwan really loved the ancestor. The ancestor shouldn't be completely heartless towards her, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't have let her run amok. Perhaps he was apprehensive about the status of master and disciple. The ancestor was a very prideful ancestor. He wouldn't allow himself to have such a stain on his reputation. Therefore, he decided to expel Yi Qingwan from the sect. But in his heart he probably couldn't let it go, right? For the past 300 years he must have been entangled. Although he had expelled Yi Qingwan from his sect, he would no longer take in any female disciples, making Yi Qingwan his only female disciple. Tsk, why does this scene look so familiar? It was like the Xinsha TV series she had just watched before she transmigrated. She didn't expect to see a living one in this world. By the way, is Yi Qingwan married? Is the ancestor married yet? Number 2 looked at her rather strangely. Although Senior Ye's temperament is a bit strange, she is extremely self-disciplined and has never had any physical contact with men. Of course, she is also not married. She had many female disciples. Even if she had male disciples, they would be taught by the female disciples. Therefore, the status of the male disciples was lower. As for the ancestor, The ancestor was a god. Which mortal woman could be worthy of him? Naturally, he's unmarried. Although the master and disciple did not meet each other, the man and the woman remained unmarried. What a torturous relationship between master and disciple. The two of them chatted as they walked and soon arrived at the foot of the falling flower peak. There was a kind of strange herb growing on the falling flower peak. It was called the heavenly ice grass. When combined with other herbs, it could improve a person's physique. It had the effect of washing the muscles and changing the marrow. Ning Xuema had been studying this thing recently. She had already prepared all the other herbs except for this one. Moreover, this kind of herb had to be quickly consumed the moment it was picked in order to have the corresponding effect. Chapter 147. Since Ning Xuema decided to come here to pick herbs, she naturally did her homework. She knew that this herb only grew in the shade of Falling Flower Peak and that there were two kinds of poisonous insects protecting the place where the herb grew. One was a poisonous snake and the other was a scorpion. The snake was a golden star demon snake and the scorpion was a heavenly star demon scorpion. Both of them were poisonous insects with a third-level psychokinesis. Although their psychokinesis was not high, there were many of them. It was said that there were nests of these snakes and scorpions on the peak. It was comparable to the Snake Island and the Scorpion Island. Because there was only one herb on this mountain peak, and this herb only had one effect and one harsh consumption condition, there was almost no one who would come here to collect this herb over the years. Number 2 naturally heard of this place. When he first heard that Ning Xuema wanted to come here, his first thought was that this girl was crazy. He knew that she had a useless physique, but she couldn't sacrifice her life just to improve her useless physique. He thought that Ning Xuema didn't know the dangers of this place, so he opened his mouth to explain to her. Unexpectedly, just as he opened his mouth, Ning Xuema cut him off. I know all of this. I've done my research before, so I know what to do. Number 2, you don't need to come with me. You can just stay at the foot of the peak. I have my own way of picking herbs. This was her business and she didn't want to make it difficult for others to take the risk with her. Number 2 was silent for a moment. He took off the fire crystal on his back and hid it in a hidden tree hole. Then he said, I'll go with you. Your Highness is not here. You don't need to follow the rules. You must protect me. Miss Ning, you don't need to persuade me. I've made up my mind. I'll go wherever Miss Ning goes. He didn't do it for the rules or for the sixth king. He was a guard and knew how to avoid harm. If it was only for the sixth king's orders, he would do his best. He wouldn't pledge his life to follow him. He only did it for her. Ning Xuema looked at his determined face and knew that he had made up his mind. She couldn't persuade him anymore. She simply said, Okay, I can take you with me. But you must listen to me on the peak. You can't make any mistakes. Yes. Number 2 looked at her suddenly serious little face and his heart skipped a beat. This girl actually had the aura of a king at this moment, and he didn't dare to disobey her. What happened next was simply a bizarre and frightening nightmare for Number 2. When they were about to reach the peak, Ning Xuema sprayed some kind of medicine on him. She sprayed it from head to toe, not sparing a single inch of his skin. The smell was strong, strange, and unpleasant. She also sprayed herself with the same spray before swaggering up to the peak with him. The first thing they saw was a snake. Large and small golden snakes were in nests. The big ones were as thick as anacondas, while the small ones were nearly a meter long. They were coiled on the rocks, wriggling in the cracks and hanging from the trees. They could be seen everywhere. Strands of snakes could be seen everywhere. It was a dazzling sight. Number 2 could be considered brave, but when he saw so many snakes, he couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb and his entire body turn cold. This kind of snake was extremely poisonous. If one was bitten by it, one would immediately die. Even a golden immortal would not be able to save them. There were no roads on the peak, only some traces left by the snakes. Number 2 suppressed his disgust and fear. According to Ning Xuema's instructions, he held his breath and slowly walked forward. Chapter 148. Strangely enough, there were snakes under their feet and on both sides of them, but not a single snake attacked them. It was as if they didn't exist at all. Without a doubt, it was the strange liquid that Ning Xuema sprayed on her body. At this time, Number 2 was still full of admiration for Ning Xuema. Girls were generally afraid of snakes. He had once seen a so-called psychokinesis genius scream like a pig being slaughtered when she saw a snake. Now in this kind of snake nest, even he was so scared that his face turned white. He had to control his legs to stop them from trembling. But he never thought that Ning Xuema, this little girl, would be able to walk through the snake array like this. She walked so lightly and without a change in expression. Even a meter-long golden snake fell from a big tree and landed on her neck. Number 2 was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Ning Xuema didn't even blink. She didn't even pay attention to the snake on her neck. She only stood there, allowing the snake to slither around her body once before leaving while shaking its head and wagging its tail. Which bastard said that Marquis Ning's daughter was a coward and had no place to be? The person who said that must be blind. From what he had seen and heard along the way, this girl was an unprecedented genius. Smart, intelligent, bold, meticulous, ambitious, and had a body full of strange skills. He was better than her father, if not better. Whoever could marry this girl would have a good fortune that couldn't be accumulated even in 8 lifetimes. It was a pity that their marquis didn't have this good fortune and missed out on such an excellent girl. They passed through the snake array without any danger. Although number 2 was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat, he was still able to hold on. Other than his face turning white, he didn't look out of place. What medicine did they spray on us just now? They seem to think that we are the same kind. Number 2 couldn't help but be curious. Ning Xuema put a snow-white finger to her lips and smiled. It's a secret recipe. Number 2. Since it was a secret, it wasn't convenient for him to ask. He looked ahead. There should be more scorpion arrays, right? Will the smell on our bodies still work? Add one more. Ning Xuema's reply was concise and comprehensive. She took out 2 small bottles of medicine and sprayed them all over. This time the smell was even stranger. It was so pungent that number 2 almost sneezed. Why does it smell like chicken poop? Number 2 almost wanted to pinch his nose. The smell was going to kill him. Ning Xuema's eyes curved. Do you want to make the scorpions avoid you because you stink, or make the scorpions come to you because you smell good? Alright, he would endure it for now. At this moment they had already entered the depths of the mountain. The 2 of them finally saw the scorpion here. The number of scorpions was much smaller than the number of snakes, and they all moved alone. The big ones were as big as a pipa, and the small ones were as big as round fans. Each of them moved as fast as lightning, and their tails were raised high like flags. Number 2's heart was filled with uncertainty. He knew that the smell on his body was the smell of a large rooster. It was said that scorpions were afraid of chickens, but with such a large scorpion that was even bigger than a rooster, would it be afraid? But he was clearly worrying too much. Their natural enemy was their natural enemy. The scorpions here were afraid of chickens. They were afraid of the smell of chicken poop on their bodies. Wherever they went, the scorpions on the side of the road would quickly run away. In the blink of an eye they would dive into the grass. They were simply unstoppable. Chapter 149. Everyone regarded this place as a dangerous place, but now it seems that as long as you find the right method, this place is very easy to pass. It's not that scary. In the future, if he came here to pick herbs, he would bring a rooster or smear some chicken dung on his body. It was just that the snake array was not easy. Until now, he still could not figure out what the smell was, let alone concocting it. Don't get any ideas. Ning Xuema opened her mouth, obviously seeing through his thoughts. Normal roosters don't have it either. The smell on our bodies right now is the smell of the sky rooster, the natural enemy of this scorpion. So that's how it is. Number 2 could not help but look at her again. The little girl in front of him seemed to be very well prepared, and her research on this place was very thorough. It seems that this little girl did not risk her life to come here. She already had a card up her sleeve. The 2 of them turned around a hillside and suddenly their eyes lit up. In front of them was a sea of stars. No, it was a field of grass that looked like stars. There were 40 to 50 grasses densely packed together, each of them more than a foot tall. They were light blue in color and their leaves were round and plump like little stars. There was a thin layer of frost on top of them, and they were emitting a faint glow from the setting sun, emitting waves of fragrance. Heavenly ice grass. He did not think that there would be so many here. Number 2's eyes lit up and he wanted to rush over. Ning Xuema gestured for him to stop. Then she took out a dagger with a crimson luster from her bosom. Take out your weapon. Number 2 was shocked. She didn't want to duel with him here, right? Miss Ning, don't worry, all the herbs here can belong to you. I won't take a single one. Ning Xuema glared at him. Stop talking nonsense. Take out your weapon, I'll smear some medicine on it. There are other kinds of poisonous snakes and scorpions in the grass, and you must use a special medicine to kill them. So that's how it is. Number 2 let out a sigh of relief and handed his sword to her. Ning Xuema took out a transparent medicine and smeared it on the blade, and then handed it to him. Use it sparingly, I only have this much. Remember, we'll each pick one herb and leave. Don't be greedy. She spoke in a dignified manner, causing number 2 to be stunned. This one can also pick one? Of course. Since you've entered the treasure mountain, how can I let you return empty-handed? This herb can slightly increase your aptitude. Once you pluck it, swallow the leaves immediately. The stalk is inedible. Remember. Number 2's heart was filled with gratitude as he said in a low voice, "Thank you." In the vast sky country, no matter what treasure they found, it would belong to their master. Even if there was a large patch of medicinal herbs, their master would monopolize it and would not let them touch a single bit. Only if they had made a huge contribution would they be able to receive the slightest bit of reward from the master. But now, for some unknown reason, he could only pick 2 stalks. Ning Xuema didn't even hesitate to give him 1 stalk. For this kind of girl, even if he sacrificed his life, it would still be hard for him to repay her. Number 2 took a deep breath and said, "Miss Ning, can we only pick 2? This humble one doesn't want it. Miss needs it more than this humble one does." "Don't talk nonsense. If I tell you to pick one, then pick one. Remember, when you pick the herbs, pay attention to the stalk. Poisonous creatures will fly out from there." "Yes, sir." Number 2 replied. Ning Xuema's eyes curved. "Good, then let's begin." She flew towards the patch of heavenly ice grass. Chapter 150. When she was right in front of him, the dagger in her right hand flashed and killed a red snake that flew out from the bushes. Her left hand took the opportunity to grab a stalk of heavenly ice grass. With a flick of her fingers, the star-like leaves of the heavenly ice grass flew into her mouth. She took advantage of the situation and stepped back 3 feet. Number 2 had been paying attention to her movements. He was quick and nimble, so he copied her movements and acted almost at the same time as her. He first killed a scorpion and then picked the grass to eat. This set of actions was as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water. But after he picked 1 stalk, he suddenly thought that since Miss Ning had treated him so well, he might as well pick another stalk for her as a form of repayment. So he did not retreat but went to pick the second stalk. Careful. 3 black shadows flew out from the bushes, 2 red and 1 gray, and bit at him like lightning. At the same time, 2 silver lights flashed from behind him and went straight for 2 of the black shadows. He hurriedly waved his right hand, and the sword in his palm struck down one of the black shadows. The black shadow that was hit by the silver light only paused for a moment before opening its mouth and spitting out 2 balls of faint purple mist. Number 2 only managed to dodge one of the balls, but was hit by the other one. The stench hit his nose and his mind went blank. His vision turned black and his body fell towards the heavenly ice grass. Idiot! Ning Xuema did not have time to catch him, so she could only kick him quickly. Before he could fall to the ground, he kicked him and sent him flying. Number 2 fell into an open space. The rock beneath him was hard, and he groaned as his body curled up slightly. "Who told you to pick more? Did you take my words for granted? Even if you want to die, this is not the way to do it." Ning Xuema flew back in time. In her anger, she scolded him. Number 2's face turned green, and the blood in his chest was boiling. He also knew that he had caused trouble, so he shrank his neck after being scolded. I'm sorry." His hand was still tightly holding the stalk of heavenly ice grass, and he trembled as he handed it over. This grass was not easy to get. Please eat another one." So he picked the extra one for her. Ning Xuema looked at his increasingly green face and her anger did not dissipate. "Idiot! Who asked you to be so nosy? Do you think I wouldn't do it if I could? Are you a pig? Don't you know how to use your brain before doing anything?" Bodyguard number 2 had known her for a long time and had often seen her smiling face, but this was the first time he had seen her so angry. When she was angry, there was a kind of fierce aura that made him shrink his neck back and half lie there like a frightened quail. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Ning Xuema had turned around and was flying towards the heavenly ice grass. He was shocked. Where are you going?" "Shut up. Be good and stay there. I'll go and find the antidote for you." Number 2 had already experienced how dangerous that patch of grass was. Seeing her like this, he almost cried, "You don't have to look for it anymore. My lowly life is not worth it." Ning Xuema ignored him. After traveling with number 2 for so long, she had already subconsciously treated him as her subordinate. Although her subordinate had made a stupid mistake, she couldn't just watch him lose his life like this. Bodyguard number 2 had been injured by a poisonous mist spat out by a poisonous snake. If he wasn't rescued in time, bodyguard number 2 would be finished in less than an hour. The only antidote for this poison was the snake's gallbladder. That snake had already been injured by her silver needle, and now it had already slithered back into the grass. She had to find it again. Chapter 151. The snakes and scorpions around the heavenly ice grass all had a special characteristic. Every stalk of grass had a snake and a scorpion under it, and they wouldn't cross the boundary between each other. If they only took one stalk, they only needed to kill one snake. But if they took a second stalk, it would arouse the vigilance of these poisonous creatures. They would help each other, and it would be hard to say what kind of attack they would receive. Fortunately, these poisonous snakes and scorpions only cared about protecting their own herbs. As long as they didn't touch those herbs, they would be very obedient and wouldn't attack. They would only stare at the intruder with their small eyes. The poisonous snake that attacked number 2 should be at the place where he picked the herbs, and it should be the 2 stalks right next to him. Therefore, Ning Xuema carefully searched for a moment and finally found the whereabouts of those 2 fellows. Her silver needles were still stuck in their bodies. She couldn't touch the herbs they were hiding in, or else it would attract the attacks of the surrounding poisonous creatures. She only flicked out 2 more anesthetic needles. After a moment, she finally came back with the 2 fainted poisonous snakes. Although it was one of the snakes that attacked number 2, these 2 fellows looked exactly the same. Ning Xuema couldn't figure out which one was the culprit, so she simply brought them both back. In just a moment, number 2 was already foaming at the mouth, and his face was as green as grass. He slightly opened his eyes and forced himself not to faint. When he saw that Ning Xuema had returned safely, he let out a sigh of relief. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. He was woken up by the bitter taste. It was as if he had swallowed 2 caddies of Chinese gold thread. It was so bitter that his tongue was almost numb. He subconsciously wanted to vomit, but a finger touched his lips. "Try it if you dare. Swallow it." The lass wasn't big, but her aura wasn't small. Number 2 steeled his heart and forced his neck to swallow the gallbladder in his mouth. After a moment, Ning Xuema looked at his still green face and sighed. "It seems like it's not that one." As she spoke, she took out another snake's gallbladder and put it next to his mouth. "This one should be it. Come, swallow this one." With a bitter face, number 2 had no choice but to swallow the second snake gallbladder. Clearly, this bitter rose gallbladder was the right medicine. His complexion gradually improved, and the dizziness in his head and the pain in his stomach gradually disappeared. His little life could be considered to have been pulled back from the gates of hell by Ning Xuema. He had already obtained the medicinal herbs, but there were many poisonous insects here, so he couldn't stay for long. Therefore, after number 2 recovered, Ning Xuema began to make arrangements for descending the mountain. Although the poison in number 2's body had been neutralized, it was still a potent poison. He did not have much strength left in his body and could only force himself to walk. Ning Xuema finished tidying everything up and looked at his deathly pale face. "Can you leave or not? Why don't you rest a little longer?" Number 2 shook his head. "No need, going down the mountain is not a problem." He couldn't implicate her anymore. This place was too dangerous. Every second counted. Ning Xuema didn't force him. Seeing that he was walking steadily, she was relieved. She also wanted to leave this poisonous nest as soon as possible. The 2 of them used the same method as when they came, and as expected, they were not attacked by any scorpions or poisonous snakes. Just as they were about to walk out of the array of golden snakes, the sky suddenly darkened, and the wind suddenly blew. The golden snakes that were peacefully swimming in the surroundings suddenly panicked and slithered into the cracks, caves, and bushes nearby. In the blink of an eye, more than 1,000 snakes had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 152. Ning Xuema was speechless. She raised her head instinctively and saw a large patch of dark clouds flying towards them. No. They were not dark clouds, they were flying birds. Eagles. But wasn't this eagle a little too big? There were more than 10 of them and they covered half the sky. Under the moonlight, their silhouettes could be vaguely seen. They had golden eyes and black feathers. Each of them was the size of a small house. When they spread their wings, they looked like gliders as they flew straight towards them. Number 2 also saw the appearance of those eagles and his expression changed drastically. He cried out, "Golden-eyed eagles. They are level 8 magic birds from the 9th peak. Heavens, they actually came here. Level 8 magic birds." Ning Xuema was speechless. They could not afford to offend them. "Hide." Ning Xuema pulled number 2 and ran. Eagles were the natural enemies of snakes. Naturally, they were coming for these golden snakes. However, if they saw the 2 of them standing here alive, they would definitely eat them as snacks. There was a small cave not far away. They would hide there first. Since it was a matter of life and death, the 2 of them were extraordinarily fast. Finally they entered the cave before the eagles arrived. The cave was not big, but it was deep enough for the two of them to hide in. The eagles outside were too big to even stretch their beaks into the cave. There was a howling wind outside mixed with the eagles' cry. The ground beneath their feet trembled. It was obvious that the eagles had landed on the peak. Then there was the sound of rocks rolling and the hissing of snakes. It was obvious that the golden snakes that did not hide well enough were forced to fight with the eagles. Ning Xuema hid at the entrance of the cave and stealthily looked outside. What she saw made her suck in a breath of cold air. These eagles knew how to use the freezing spell. They opened their mouths and spat out a gust of cold wind. It froze the snakes hiding in the crevices of the rocks, making them unable to move. Then they used their sharp beaks to peck at the crevices of the rocks. The hard rocks were instantly crushed into powder and the golden snakes hidden inside were pulled out. The captured golden snakes were naturally unwilling to die like this. However, their bodies were stiff and they could not use the binding spell to strangle the eagles' necks. The eagles were not afraid of the poison they spat out, so they could only open their mouths and bite. These falcons were clearly experts at catching snakes. The place in their mouths was precisely the snake's 7 inches. When they saw the snake opening its mouth to bite over, they just shook their heads, and the snake drooped down like noodles and stopped moving. The eagles that caught the snake would flap their wings and fly up, meaning that they were on their way back. As most of the snakes hid in caves and crevices, it was not easy for the eagles to catch them. Those that were hidden shallowly were fished out by them in a few mouthfuls. However, those that were deeply hidden could not be reached. Thus, Ning Xuema once again saw a rather strange scene. The eagles could actually destroy the caves. Their sharp beaks were sharper and harder than any iron tools, and they could dig out a large piece of rock with just one bite. They gradually widened the small holes to make it easier for them to enter. Ning Xuema looked at the cave they were hiding in and was speechless. She did not expect these eagles to have the ability of woodpeckers. Woodpeckers used their beaks to break the bark of trees to catch insects. And these eagles used their beaks to break the stone walls to catch snakes. It was obviously not safe for them to hide in the cave. But if they ran out now, they would be live targets. One of the eagles seemed to have noticed that there were living creatures in the cave and strode over. Chapter 153. Oh no. Ning Xuemo retracted her head and walked deeper into the cave with number 2. Be careful. Number 2 pulled her back. She also felt that she had stepped on something slippery under her feet. She was startled and retreated backwards like flowing water. When she lowered her head to look, her body stiffened. Beneath their feet was a large snake. It was about 2 zhang long and as thick as a small bucket. Half of its body was coiled up, and its triangular head was raised high. Its pair of cold green eyes stared fixedly at Ning Xuema and Qin Wenyan. The cave was dark. Ning Xuema's martial arts were still weak and her night vision was poor. At first she couldn't see the inside of the cave clearly. Just now she had almost stepped on the snake's tail. Ning Xuema knew that this kind of snake had a bad temper and its attack power was very strong. Ning Xuema and number 2's body emitted a large amount of heat because of their running just now. At this moment their body odor was different from the snake's. Logically speaking, this snake would explode and hurt people. However, they didn't expect that the snake would only use its pair of green eyes to look at them threateningly for a moment. Its body shrunk inwards and it closed its eyes again. The cave returned to darkness. A large bird's beak reached in from outside. A tongue stuck out from the beak and desperately swiped into the depths of the cave. Ning Xuema and number 2 held their breath and tried their best to stick their bodies to the cave wall. Fortunately, the cave was deep enough and the bird's tongue couldn't reach them. However, looking at the bright red tongue not far in front of them, Ning Xuema felt the hair on her back stand up. This bird's tongue could actually reach so deep. The birds in this world were all so mutated. The bird's tongue reached into the cave for a moment and then retracted back. Before Ning Xuema could breathe a sigh of relief, the sound of the bird's beak pecking on the rocks came from outside. Amidst the rumbling, large rocks fell to the ground. The narrow cave entrance outside was also expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Oh no. It seemed that the bird had already discovered that there were snakes or other food in the cave. Ning Xuema and number 2 had already retreated to the deepest part of the cave. At this speed, they would be swept out by the bird's beak in less than 15 minutes. They couldn't just sit and wait for death. Every now and then the bird would stick its tongue in and try a circle. Ning Xuema quickly smeared different strong poisons on her and number 2's weapons. Taking advantage of the time when the bird's tongue came in to probe again, she leaped up and stabbed each of them once. Chi-chi. The 2 swords pierced into the tongue and blood splashed out. The bird let out a shrill cry and retracted its tongue at lightning speed. If the two of them had not withdrawn their swords quickly enough, they would have been dragged out by the tongue as well. From outside came the long cry of the falcon and the sound of its hooting. It was obvious that the falcon was in pain. After a while, the bird's chirping stopped, and the sound of crazily chiseling stones could be heard. It was obvious that the bird was angry. The speed at which he chiseled the stone was much faster than before. The poison didn't work. That's right, this bird eats poisonous things every day, so it has a strong resistance to poison. The plan of using poison to kill it has failed once again. Moreover, this bird had learned its lesson after suffering the first time. It no longer used its tongue to explore the cave, and only crazily expanded the cave entrance. Hiss. A sound came from behind. Ning Xuema and number 2 turned around and saw that the golden snake had opened its eyes again. It stuck out its long tongue at the two of them, and its large head was slowly approaching them. Ning Xuema subconsciously retreated, and this time she retreated in the direction of the cave entrance. There was a huge beak waiting for them at the entrance. Chapter 154. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Was this snake trying to force them out and make them scapegoats? These birds would fly away as soon as they caught food. If they were forced out and became the bird's food, then the snake would be safe. How could a snake be so cunning? Since that was the case, Ning Xuema and number 2 glanced at each other. Then, one from the left and one from the right, they attacked the snake. This snake was ferocious and venomous. Once bitten by it, it would be over. Fortunately, when Ning Xuema came, she already knew the snake's temperament and taboo. She brought along many things that could restrain it. If it was under normal circumstances, number 2 would be able to deal with this huge snake. However, he had just been cured of the venom and did not have much strength left. He could not even use 20% of his strength. On the other hand, Ning Xuema was small and did not have much strength. Now that the two of them worked together, they could barely suppress the golden snake. The two of them spent a tremendous amount of effort before finally killing the snake. Then they worked together to push the snake's corpse outwards. The huge bird's beak came in and grabbed the snake's corpse before dragging it out. We've finally escaped this calamity. Number 2 was still in shock as he let out a long sigh. Before he could finish his sentence, the sound of stone being chiseled could be heard again. Fuck, it can't be. With a scapegoat, why would it not let the two of them go? In the blink of an eye, the hole had been opened to a large enough size for the bird to drill its entire head in. Its huge beak was like lightning as it stabbed towards the two of them. At this moment, the two of them had nowhere to retreat. Ning Xuema was just outside the perimeter and the direction of the bird's beak was heading towards Ning Xuema's chest. Ning Xuema steeled her heart and wanted to use her sword to block it. However, unexpectedly, her shoulder tightened and she could not help but spin in a circle. The two of them had switched positions and number 2 was standing where she was just now. The bird's beak stabbed him and he was dragged outwards. "Miss Ning, take care." These were the last words that number 2 said to her. He wanted to use his own life to fight for Ning Xuema's survival. Ning Xuema's mind exploded. Seeing that number 2's body was about to be dragged out of the cave, she flew up and slashed her sword towards the huge beak. Sparks flew in all directions as Ning Xuema's dagger left a white mark on the bird's beak. The bird was in so much pain that it trembled. With a swoosh, the huge bird retreated from the cave. And because Ning Xuema couldn't withdraw her sword in time, she was brought out by it. Unfortunately, her clothes were hanging on the feathers near the bird's head. At this moment, his entire body was hanging on the bird's head, swinging back and forth. She hurriedly tried to cut off the straps of her clothes, but she didn't expect the bird to fly up into the sky as soon as it withdrew its head. Ning Xuema, she didn't dare to cut off her clothes anymore. On the contrary, she hurriedly wrapped the rest of her clothes around the bird's head. Her hands also tightly grasped the bird's feathers, afraid that she would fall and shatter into pieces. Miss Ning. Number 2 was actually not dead yet. He was being held horizontally by the bird. Looking at Ning Xuema, his eyes were filled with tears. He didn't expect that this little girl would have the courage to live and die with him. He was too touched. Ning Xuema. She really didn't mean to cause this situation. Don't move. She shouted in a low voice, stopping number 2's subconscious struggle. Looking at the bird, it didn't seem like it had any intention of killing him. Otherwise, it would have swallowed number 2 alive long ago. Even if he struggled to escape from the bird's beak, he would still be smashed into pieces. It was better to deal with the situation by remaining unchanged. Chapter 155. Number 2 had obviously thought of this as well and did not dare to move again. Ning Xuema had sat on many flying devices before, but this was the first time she was flying on a bird's head. This bird had a person in its beak and a person on its head. It felt extremely uncomfortable and couldn't help but fly up and down, shaking its head constantly in an attempt to throw Ning Xuema off. High up in the sky, diving up and down, this feeling was 1,000 times more exciting and 10,000 times more dangerous than riding a roller coaster. Ning Xuema's stomach churned violently and she felt like she was going to vomit. She held onto the bird's feathers tightly as her body was swung back and forth in the air. It was extremely dangerous. Compared to Ning Xuema, number 2 was much safer. He looked at Ning Xuema with trepidation and kept shouting for her to be careful. Ning Xuema also knew that this was extremely dangerous. 2 of her belts had already been broken by this damn bird, leaving only one hanging dangerously. The main support points were still her hands. She took a deep breath and resisted the nausea from the sudden loss of gravity. She suddenly flipped her body upside down and finally climbed onto the bird's head, lying on top of it. Then she used both her hands and feet to firmly secure herself on top. Her small body was light, so lying on top of it like this finally made the bird feel less uncomfortable. It was also tired from the tossing and turning, so it simply flew towards the 9th summit of Heavenly Book Mountain. Although Ning Xuema and number 2's lives were not in danger for the time being, their prospects were not optimistic. The 9th summit was a mysterious place that legend said that only the sect masters of the various sects dared to venture into. Even if a rookie like her and number 2, who was an amateur, could escape with their lives from the bird's mouth, could they escape the 9th summit alive? Miss Ning, this one has implicated you. Number 2's heart was filled with guilt. Stop talking nonsense and conserve your strength. Ning Xuema did not hold back with him. This was not the time to be polite. It was most important to conserve her strength and seize every opportunity to survive. The speed of this eagle's flight was abnormally fast. The wind was biting cold, making it difficult for her to open her eyes. Riding on the bird's head at such a high altitude would inevitably make her dizzy, so she simply closed her eyes and secretly adjusted her breathing. Although the future was bleak, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, she had to live on. After flying like this for about half an hour, the eagle's flying speed slowed down. Ning Xuema opened her eyes, only to see the mountains and rivers under her body moving backwards at a rapid speed. Countless tall trees flashed past her eyes. She looked in the direction where the bird was flying and saw a rugged black cliff in the distance. Needless to say, the cliff was the nest of the falcons. He absolutely could not allow it to bring them there, or else they would be completely dead. Her eyes searched desperately, trying to find a good place to rest. However, the bird had been flying very high and there were only trees and rocks below. If she fell, she would be smashed to pieces no matter where she fell. Just as she was feeling a little hopeless, she suddenly heard the sound of a waterfall in the distance. Her eyes lit up. If there was a waterfall, there would be a pool. If they could pass by the pool, they might be saved. She tightened her body and used the dagger to cut off the last piece of cloth that was hanging on the feather. Then she used the cloth to blindfold one of the eagle's eyes. No matter what kind of bird it was, it would subconsciously fly in the direction it could see, and this eagle was no exception. Ning Xuema used this method to adjust the direction of the eagle's flight and drove it in the direction of the sound of water. The sound of water was getting louder and louder, and not far ahead, a lake appeared. The lake was not small, and the lake water was dark blue. It was obvious that the lake was very deep. Sure enough, the heavens did not want her to die. Be careful, get ready to escape. Ning Xuema gave the order to number 2. Number 2's body immediately tensed up. Ning Xuema waited until the eagle under her was about to reach the lake. She suddenly grabbed the feather and swung her dagger towards one of the eagle's eyes. Chapter 156. No matter how tough a bird was, its eyes were its weakest spot. Blood splattered everywhere and the bird cried out in pain. Number 2 fell from its beak and fell into the lake like a meteor. Ning Xuema didn't hesitate either. After she succeeded, she immediately jumped down from the bird's head and swooped down. There were 2 loud bangs and 2 huge waves splashed on the surface of the lake. The 2 of them fell heavily into the lake. Although the hawk flew a little lower under Ning Xuema's control, it was still about 100 meters high. Falling from such a high place, even if they fell into the water, the impact would still be fatal. Although Ning Xuema adjusted herself in the air to the diving position of a diver, she still felt dizzy when she fell into the water. She couldn't help but fall to the bottom of the lake. Fortunately, the bottom of the lake was deep enough. Ning Xuema couldn't see the bottom even after diving for more than 10 meters. When she finally got rid of the dizziness and struggled to float to the surface, it was already half a minute later. She had just floated to the surface and didn't have time to take a breath. Suddenly, a strong wind blew above her head. A shadow covered her head, and a pair of sharp claws scratched at her head. Xuema! She heard a loud shout. A figure pounced on her and pressed her into the water. Splash! The pressure on Ning Xuema's head was suddenly relieved. She raised her head and saw number 2's body being lifted into the air by a huge bird's claw. Number 2. Ning Xuema popped her head out of the water and shouted. But she could only watch as he was carried into the sky. My name is Stone. Xuema, I'm happy to have met you in this life. It's worth dying. In my next life, I only want to be your bodyguard. Number 2's waist had already been scratched by the hawk's claws. His internal organs had been ruptured. He knew that he had no chance of survival this time. Rather than being brought back to the nest and eaten by the bird, it was better to kill himself. This would also cut off Ning Xuema's idea of rescuing him. Therefore, he forced himself to finish his words. The sword in his hand that he had been holding tightly pressed against his neck. Blood spurted out, and his life was cut off. Blood trickled down from the sky like a small stream, falling into the water and stirring up circles of ripples as it flowed into the distance. A few drops of blood dripped onto Ning Xuema's face, which was still warm. She touched it and watched the blood drop from her fingertips. She closed her eyes slightly. She knew that he was dead. In the end, she didn't save him. Instead, he saved her twice. He was her first companion who had gone through life and death with her in this world. She didn't expect him to die here. She didn't even know the real name of number 2, who had a baby face and was always sullen. She knew that in order to train a group of personal bodyguards, some princes would have a special training camp. The children in the training camp were all abducted from a young age. They didn't know where they came from. They didn't know where they came from. They didn't even know their own names. Their daily task was to learn, and kill. After rounds of cruel elimination, most of the children died in the process. The most outstanding ones survived and became the bodyguards of the princes. Their only purpose in life was to loyally protect their masters. They were the sharpest sword in the hands of the princes, the strongest shield. They didn't have names, only code names. Number 2 was undoubtedly the most outstanding of them all. Chapter 157. Number 2 was undoubtedly one of the most outstanding. He barely remembered his own nickname, but he had never told anyone about it. This time, he finally said it to the girl he trusted the most. The falcon was already far away, but there were still blood stains on the surface of the lake, rippling in circles. Ning Xuema soaked in the lake and looked at the falcon's back as it disappeared into the distance. She slowly clenched her fists. If she was just a bit stronger, her companions might not have died. She did not want this kind of situation to happen again, so she had to become stronger. She had to survive. The 9th summit was the most dangerous place in the legends. It was not a place where a rookie like her could stay for long, so her main goal now was to leave this place safely. She quickly looked around and saw that there were mountains all around her, surrounding the lake in the middle. The terrain was similar to the Heaven Lake in Changbai Mountain. Could this lake be the crater of a volcano? Looking at the peaks around her, her eyebrows rose even higher. There were a total of 8 peaks around her, and each peak faintly corresponded with the 8 trigrams. The 8 peaks all had different shapes. Some were like dragons, some were like tigers, some were like phoenixes, and some were like turtles and snakes in one body. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't this the azure dragon on the left, the white tiger on the right, the vermilion bird on the front, and the black tortoise on the back? These 4 mountains were located in the east, west, south, and north respectively. The other 4 peaks were obviously much shorter, and their shapes were not very regular. They also looked like some animals, but Ning Xuema could not tell what they looked like. The 8 peaks also had different colors. Some were sparkling like snow, some were fiery red like the morning sun, some were dark green like jade, and some were dark like the night. Each had its own style. On each peak there was a waterfall flowing down. The color of the waterfall was the same as the color of the peak. The waterfall flowed all the way into the lake. This scene was like a dream. Even in a dream, one would not be able to imagine such a magnificent scene. More importantly, this kind of combination of peaks was the easiest to gather the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. In addition, the other 16 peaks of the Heavenly Book Mountain seemed to be worshipping it. Their spiritual chi would also gather towards the 9th summit, so it was not strange for the highest level of magical beasts to appear here. This was a natural holy land for cultivation. If he could cultivate here, he would be able to achieve 100 with half the effort, and his cultivation speed would be astonishing. Was this a masterpiece of nature? Or was it the work of the gods? If it was naturally formed, then it would be too much of a coincidence. If it was man-made, who had the power to move mountains and fill seas? Unless they were immortals. Thinking of immortals, Ning Xuema thought of Dizun. Could it be him? He shook his head again. Impossible. If that person really had such an ability, he definitely wouldn't have stayed on this continent. Instead, he would have ascended to the heavenly court to become an immortal. Perhaps it was really natural, a masterpiece left behind by God in this world. The most beautiful place was also the most dangerous place. Ning Xuema was not in the mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery. She had to leave the lake first, climb up a mountain and then find a way down. She was floating in the middle of the lake. She looked at the mountains around her. Since this place coincided with the 8 trigrams, she decided to try the gate of life. She chose a direction and swam towards the shore. At this time it was already night time. It was exactly the 15th night. The moon in the sky was as big as a silver plate, reflecting the lake's sparkling waves as if the lake was filled with pearls. The moonlight was as light as a thin veil, gently rippling along with the lake. Chapter 158. Ning Xuema felt as if there was a weak electric current in the lake. While she was swimming, she could feel the electric current flowing into her body. The feeling was similar to when she was in the hot spring in the Crown Prince's residence. In fact, the feeling was much stronger. Was this lake the place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was refined and mysterious? Therefore, the heaven and earth's spiritual energy was the most majestic. Even a trash like her could feel it so strongly. If a genius were to come here, 3 days of cultivation here would be equivalent to 3 years of cultivation elsewhere. Strange, such a treasure mountain. Even if only the sovereign could come here, they should have thought of ways to take over this place and build a cave residence or something, right? At the very least, they should have come here once every few days. It was not like what Ji Yunhuang said that the sovereigns did not come here often. They might not even come here once in 8 to 10 years. This was a little illogical. Ning Xuema actually wanted to soak in this lake for a while longer. Maybe if she were to soak in this lake for 10 days to half a month, she would be able to become a pillar of the sect. However, she had not eaten anything for almost half a day and had risked her life for so long. She was so hungry that her heart was stuck to her back. She was anxious to find a place to rest and eat something to replenish her energy. The bright moon in the sky was like a plate. In her hungry stomach, it looked like a large sesame seed cake. She could not wait to take 2 bites out of it. She swam for a while and suddenly felt that something was wrong. With her swimming speed, she should be close to the shore. However, when she looked forward, she was still so far away from the shore. It was as if she was going in circles. Strange, no matter which direction she looked at, it was clear and picturesque. She could even see the shapes of the plants by the lakeside clearly. When she swam, she could clearly see the water traces in front of her, but she could not swim to the shore. It was as if she had encountered a ghost wall. Ning Xuema had walked the path at night many times. She had also walked in the deep mountains and forests. She had even ambushed at the mass grave. She had also encountered a ghost wall before. However, the ghost wall was surrounded by fog and she could not see the path. It was not like the current situation where she could see everything clearly. To be on the safe side, she cut her finger and used her blood to draw a simple spell to break the ghost labyrinth. She had learned this method from an exorcist. Although she had only learned it once, it was effective in breaking the ghost labyrinth. But now she had used her most powerful method, but it didn't work. She was still in the middle of the water. There was something strange about this lake. Could it be that he was heading in the wrong direction? She tried to swim in a different direction. She chose to swim in the opposite direction. Unexpectedly, after swimming for less than a meter, the lake water, which had been as calm as a mirror, suddenly started to boil. It formed a huge whirlpool in front of and behind her, and the waves were trying to pull her into the whirlpool. Damn it, the lake was so deep. If she really got sucked in, she would be done for. She hurriedly struggled to get away from the vortex. She was an excellent swimmer. Even in such a turbulent current, she could rely on her own strength to break free from the whirlpool's whirlpool and stay away from it. However, it was strange. As long as she swam forward, there would definitely be a huge whirlpool in front of her. Moreover, the whirlpools were bigger and stronger than the previous one. There were a few times when she almost got sucked in. When she looked back, the place where the whirlpool had appeared was calm. The whirlpool had disappeared without a trace. It was no different from before. Chapter 159. Ning Xuema didn't dare to take any more risks, so she turned around and swam back. The moment she swam back, the turbulent water around her immediately became gentle again. The blue waves were boundless and the water was as clear as a mirror. She was speechless. Was it an illusion? But she clearly felt the huge pulling force of the whirlpool. It didn't seem to be an illusion. She tried to swim in other directions, but every time she encountered all kinds of dangers. For example, Xiang Nan encountered a huge magical beast that looked like a legendary water monster. It jumped straight up from the water and she almost swam into its big mouth. At first, she told herself that it was an illusion and she didn't need to pay attention to it. But when the water monster's tail hit her waist almost broke. Only then did she believe it was real. Fortunately, she was smart enough to only be hit by the monster's tail. Otherwise, she probably would have been cut into 2 pieces. She saw that the situation wasn't good, so she had to turn back. Only then did the monster disappear. She didn't have any luck in other directions either. In some places, an erupting volcano appeared in front of her, and the red magma came crashing down. If she hadn't dodged quickly, she probably would have been burned to a crisp. In some places, it was like a muddy quagmire. Even a goose feather couldn't float. Ning Xuema believed that once she fell into it, she would never be able to get out of it. She tried all 8 directions. Except for the life gate that she chose at the beginning, the other directions were all dead ends. Ning Xuema looked at the shore in front of her. It wasn't far, but she couldn't swim to the shore. Her heart turned cold. Could it be that she was destined to drown in this strange lake? Coo! Suddenly, a bird's cry came from the sky. Ning Xuema looked up and saw a big bird with a human head and an eagle's body flying straight toward her. Obviously, it wanted to catch her and use her as food. Ning Xuema originally wanted to submerge herself into the water to avoid it, but an idea came to her mind. She slightly twisted her body and waited for the big bird's claw to grab her. The ribbon in her hand flew out and wrapped around the big bird's claw, abruptly tightening. The big bird was shocked. Ning Xuema had already used the force of the pull to fly up and grab onto one of the big bird's legs. The big bird soared into the air. It was obviously a clever one, and it immediately used its other claw to scratch. However, in this kind of life and death situation, Ning Xuema's body was exceptionally slippery. Furthermore, its thigh was thick, which acted as a shield for her. It didn't manage to scratch her. Instead, it scratched its own thigh until it was dripping with blood. The big bird scratched a few times in succession, but to no avail. He lowered his head and spat fire at her, but she dodged quickly. Not only did the fire not touch her, but she also burned the hair on her legs. This time the big bird had no more curses. It had to give up the idea of getting Ning Xuema down for the time being. It flapped its wings and flew back to its nest. This was also Ning Xuema's goal. As long as it took her away from this strange lake, she would think of other ways to escape. Unexpectedly, the big bird seemed to have encountered a ghost in the air. It was obviously flying forward, but below it was the lake. It couldn't fly out of the range of the lake. After flying for a while, the bird seemed to have panicked. It started to fly around like a headless fly. Ning Xuema hugged its thigh and looked around. The scenery didn't change, but the big bird seemed to have encountered something that terrified it to the extreme. Its body started to tremble and it started to struggle violently. On its wings, body, and claws there were wounds. Those wounds were of different shapes. Chapter 160. There were wounds on its wings, body, and claws. The wounds were of different shapes. Some looked like they had been torn apart, some looked like they had been injured by a sharp weapon, and some looked like they had been pecked by something. Ning Xuema was shocked. It seemed that the bird had been attacked by the illusion just like she had been in the water. Moreover, it was a real attack. A cold wind suddenly blew toward Ning Xuema. The wind was fierce and had a strange fishy smell. Ning Xuema reacted quickly. Once she realized that something was wrong, she immediately let go of her hands and fell into the lake again. Almost at the same time, the bird let out a miserable cry. Its 2 legs had been cut off by something. It lost its balance and fell into the lake. This bird was obviously a non-swimmer. It flopped in the lake a few times and slowly sank to the bottom. The lake returned to its previous calm. The lake rippled gently as if nothing had happened. Ning Xuema had goosebumps all over her body. It seemed that not only was there something strange in the lake, but there was also something strange in the sky above the lake. Looking at this large body of water, it didn't seem like there were any traps. Could it be the legendary divine restriction? She couldn't be so unlucky, right? She looked around blankly in the water, feeling as if there was no road to heaven and no door to hell. If she had known this would happen, she would have agreed to the old emperor's proposal and become his beast concubine. It would have been better than suffering in this place. This dispirited thought only flashed through her mind. She clenched her teeth and pulled herself together. Her personality was not to give up easily until the last moment. Other people wouldn't give up until they reached the Yellow River, but she wouldn't give up until she reached the Yellow River. Unless she took her last breath, she would crash her way out even if she had to. She didn't believe that this was a hopeless situation without a chance of survival. Perhaps the chance of survival was not far away. She would be able to see it if she tried harder. She took a deep breath. Since it was useless no matter where she swam, she might as well float on the spot and recover her strength. The surrounding water rippled slightly, and countless weak electric currents flowed into her body from the major acupoints all over her body. This electric current was different from the internal energy that she cultivated. Wherever it went, it was as if there were green vines wriggling around, blooming brightly all the way. It made her feel as if her entire body had become a few kilograms lighter. When the electric current once again approached her dantian, it paused for a moment before disappearing without a trace. Ning Xuema. Other people's dantian was used to store psychokinesis, but her dantian seemed to be used to devour psychokinesis. As long as she cultivated a little bit of psychokinesis, as long as she passed by this place, it would immediately be devoured clean. Could it be that there was a monster in her dantian that ate psychokinesis? Ning Xuema tried her best to use her inner vision to see the situation in her dantian, but all she could see was a vast expanse of white fog. What the hell? Ning Xuema knew what other people would see when they used their inner vision to look at their dantian. As long as they cultivated psychokinesis, they would be able to see their own crystal pillar-like spiritual roots. The higher the spiritual roots, the stronger the psychokinesis. However, she couldn't even see a single spiritual leaf, let alone a spiritual root. After being tormented for so long, she was even hungrier and her stomach was burning. She raised her head and suddenly saw that the huge bird that had sunk earlier had floated up again. It was half floating and half sinking not far away from her. She swam over and took out her dagger. Chapter 161. This bird did not have copper skin and iron bones, but its meat was very easy to cut. She easily cut off 2 pieces and stuffed one into her mouth, ignoring the smell. This bird was ugly and its meat was quite tough, so it was more strenuous to chew than chewing cowhide. Ning Xuema straightened her neck and swallowed 2 pieces, then couldn't eat any more. That's right, according to number 2, all the magical beasts here had crystals in their bodies. This bird was produced by the 9 peaks, so it must have reached the 8th level of psychokinesis. There might be a top-grade crystal in its body. If she could survive and bring the crystal back, it would be a very cool thing to do, and it would not be a waste of her trip here. She immediately began to dissect the big bird. Fortunately, she had seen the process of number 2 retrieving the crystal, so she knew where the crystals were usually hidden. So after half an hour, she finally took out a transparent red crystal that looked like a deer's antler from the strange bird's sternum. This crystal was less than a foot long, and its diameter was less than an inch. It looked very small and delicate. Ning Xuema turned the crystal over and over to examine it. This crystal should not be as good as the one inside the flying dragon centipede's body, right? It seemed that the crystals produced by the 9 peaks were not as good as the crystals produced by the 6th and 7th peaks. She held the crystal and wanted to feel the spiritual power on it, but she did not expect that as soon as she tried to use her spiritual power, she felt a stream of energy from the crystal enter her palm. Her entire arm felt as if it was electrified and immediately went numb. This numbness spread very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it spread throughout her body. She felt as if she had turned into a hard wooden stake in an instant. She wanted to throw away the crystal in her hand, but she couldn't. She could only feel the hot stream of energy crazily flowing through her body, and in the blink of an eye, it had also reached her dantian. Then just like before, it disappeared in the blink of an eye without even a spark. At the same time that the stream of energy disappeared, Ning Xuema also regained consciousness. She opened her eyes and found that she had sunk more than 2 meters into the water like an iron dummy. She quickly moved her limbs and floated up again. Strangely, although the hot stream of energy that the red crystal brought to her was uncomfortable, after the stream of energy disappeared, she actually felt comfortable again. The internal energy in her dantian had an obvious trend of growth. Looking at the red crystal in the water again, she was shocked. The red crystal that was as red as the morning sun had now turned into a gray-white bone. It was as if all the nourishment and spiritual energy had been sucked clean by her. The scene was a bit strange. Ning Xuema threw away the bone and looked at her hand. Her hands were flushed red, and her fingers were long and slender. She seemed to be a lot more moisturized than before. The calluses on his palms had also faded to the point where they were almost invisible. Ning Xuema was stunned for a moment. Could it be that this hand of hers had the legendary star-sucking great technique? She shook her head. She didn't want to think about these minor issues anymore. She had to find a way out first. He had to find a way out first. She carefully looked around and suddenly realized that her eyesight seemed to have improved. Previously, she could only vaguely see the branches of the big trees by the shore. Now she could actually see the direction of the top leaves. Since there was a restriction above the lake, it proved that the restriction wasn't placed in the lake, but in the surroundings. Ning Xuema's gaze landed on the surrounding mountain peaks again. Suddenly she realized that the 4 mountains that resembled divine beasts seemed to have changed a little. Strange, the mountains could also move? She stared at the 8 mountains for a long time and finally realized that the 8 mountains and the lake in the middle were actually moving slowly. Chapter 162. Along with their rotation, their shapes were also changing. The white tiger's body was gradually elongating and had the tendency to turn into an azure dragon. Her heart suddenly moved. Could this be a 9-star 8 trigrams array? The more she looked at it, the more it looked like it, and the more surprised she was. She had seen the 9-star 8 trigrams array in a book before. It had an unpredictable mechanism. If she had the materials, she could also set it up. However, this kind of array was set up with stones and trees. It would also be set up on a large turntable to correspond to the 9 planets in the sky. Because the conditions for setting up this kind of array were too harsh, Ning Xuema only knew how to set it up on paper. She had never set it up before. She did not expect to see it here. Moreover, it was set up with mountain peaks. Making the surrounding mountains rotate was simply unimaginable. The things in this world really couldn't be judged with common sense. Ning Xuema sighed in her heart. Since she had already seen through the array, she naturally knew how to break it. She followed the method of breaking the array in the water. She swam 1 meter forward, half a meter backward, 1 foot diagonally, and 3 feet horizontally. She kept changing her direction in the water, and sure enough, the illusion she saw before did not appear again. 2 hours later, her eyes suddenly lit up. The scenery around her had completely changed. The lake was still the same lake. There was no change, but the scenery around the lake was completely different. The original Divine Beast Mountain had disappeared without a trace and was replaced by a mountain peak that pierced through the clouds. It was like a graceful beauty standing tall in all directions. The entire mountain peak was covered with ice and snow. Under the moonlight, it was crystal clear white. On the 2 sides of the mountain peak, there were 2 waterfalls that flowed down like pearls and splashed jade all the way into the lake. On the 2 sides of the mountain peak, there were small mountains that looked like children under the seat of a fairy. Between the mountain peaks, there were wisps of white clouds. The clouds covered the sky, making it look like a dream. At a glance, it was as if a high and mighty fairy was leading a group of fairy children on a tour of the world. Ning Xuema stared at the highest mountain peak. The mountain peak was completely white without a trace of other colors. She vaguely felt that this mountain seemed familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere before. After staring at it for a long time, he suddenly realized that this mountain didn't look like a beauty, but rather like the ancestor. The mountains were like his oversized white robe, and the glaciers that hung from the peaks were like his long hair. The ancestor's hair was as black as ink, but if this mountain had hair, it was as white as snow. Apart from this difference, the mountain's topography was very similar to that of the venerable emperor. Could it be that the ancestor had dressed himself up in imitation of this peak? Yes, that's possible. Super awesome people usually have super awesome ways to act cool. At this time she had already climbed up to the shore. The green grass on the shore was like a carpet. Sitting on it was like sitting on a soft sofa, very comfortable. Tired, she was really tired. She was so tired that all the bones in her body felt like they were about to fall apart. She didn't dare to lie down, afraid that she wouldn't be able to get up again once she lay down. Because there was no one to protect her and she was in such a dangerous place, she didn't dare to enter a meditative state. She just closed her eyes and panted. Her divine sense was still constantly paying attention to the movements around her. Suddenly she seemed to notice something. She suddenly opened her eyes and turned her head to look at the lake behind her. Then, she froze there. Chapter 163. There was a strange platform in the middle of the lake that was empty just a moment ago. The platform was stacked on top of each other, as if it was formed by pieces of green leaves. It was the size of a square table and it shone under the moonlight. However, this was not what shocked Ning Xuema the most. What stunned her the most was that there was a child sitting on the platform. It was a child that looked like it was carved out of fine jade. The child looked to be about 2 years old. He had slightly closed eyes, a tall nose, light pink lips, and a cinnabar mole that looked like a flower bud between his eyebrows. He was only wearing a light silver doo-doo, revealing his fair arms and legs. He was meditating with his eyes closed. His snow-white hair was draped over his body like a curtain, and it shone with a silver luster under the moonlight. The platform was in the middle of the lake, and the moonlight shone on him. The surroundings were hazy like a veil. In the half-lit landscape, only his figure was so distinct. The moonlight generously created a circle of faint silver light around him, as if he was enveloped in a layer of Buddha's light. Immortal? Monster? Or a mountain elf? Ning Xuema stared at the child, and a few guesses flashed through her mind. Naturally, she did not think that he was human. After all, this was the 9th peak that normal people could not enter. No child would come here by accident. She held her breath, and her eyes fell on the cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. The shape of the cinnabar mole looked a little like a ginseng flower. Could this be a ginseng baby? Ning Xuema's eyes lit up. She looked at his fair arms and legs, and the image of a fat ginseng flashed past her eyes. Ginseng was a great tonic. It was said that ginseng would take a human form after 100 years, a head and a face after 500 years, and all 5 senses after 1,000 years. It could only transform into a human form after 10,000 years. Usually, it would be in the shape of a baby. There were countless legends about ginseng babies among the people, but the most famous one was that one could live forever after eating one. In the legends, Zhang Guolao became an immortal after eating a ginseng spirit. This place was deserted, and the lake was so strange that no one would be able to come here in 10,000 years. It was not impossible for a ginseng to cultivate into a human form. She didn't expect to bump into one when she came here by accident. How lucky. Since she had encountered him, she would not let him go. Maybe if she ate this ginseng baby, her power would increase greatly and she would become a genius beauty. She would be able to do whatever she wanted on this continent. More importantly, after her cultivation had greatly increased, she was more confident that she could break out of this mountain peak. She secretly took a deep breath and looked at the things she had brought with her. She needed silver needles and red threads to catch the ginseng essence. There were silver needles and silk threads, but unfortunately they were not red. However, this was not a problem for her. She gently cut her finger with a short knife and dyed the thread red with blood. Then he put it into a small sealed bottle. When everything was ready, she slipped into the water again. She was an excellent swimmer. She could swim underwater for 3 minutes without needing to breathe. She swam underwater like a silent barracuda and moved towards the platform. Nearer, nearer still. The distance was about 500 meters. Ning Xuema only took 2 breaths along the way. In between breaths, she glanced at the boy again. The boy was still meditating, oblivious to the approaching danger. When she was close to the green platform, Ning Xuema slowed down. She first gathered her strength in the water and held the silver needles in her hand. Chapter 164. Legend had it that one had to prick the ginseng baby to seal it so that it could not run away. Head, neck, chest, legs, feet. She had read too few myths, so she could not remember. She approached from the back of the boy and looked at him from the surface of the water. She saw that the skin of the boy's back was like a beautiful jade carving under the moonlight, without a single flaw. His silvery hair flowed into the water, as smooth as the moonlight. Such a posture of the boy's back was extremely beautiful. If she were to prick him with the needle, Ning Xuema suddenly felt that she could not do it. Forget it. According to the legend, it was wrapped with a red thread. She might as well prick the boy's undergarment with the silver needle and wrap the thread around his neck. In this case, she could only go around to the front of the boy. She silently dived into the water again and inevitably saw the roots of the green leaf platform. Her heart skipped a beat. The bottom of the green leaf platform was like a big tree. There was a huge root system with countless aerial roots crisscrossing in the water. These fine aerial roots were hollow, allowing fine streams of water to flow into them. Ning Xuema could clearly see the gurgling sound of the water flowing inside the aerial roots. The direction of the flow was precisely the direction where the boy was sitting cross-legged. Could it be that the boy was not only absorbing the essence of the moon, but also absorbing the spiritual energy in the lake? This was a good idea. The spiritual energy here was the richest. If one cultivated well, Cultivating here for a year would be equivalent to cultivating elsewhere for 100 years. No wonder the ginseng baby was so fresh and beautiful. Even if you cultivate into a demon, you will still be my food today. She was like a snake hunting its prey, quietly swimming to the front of the boy and slowly approaching him. Then she suddenly launched an attack. The silver needle in her hand was like a ray of light, with a red thread running directly towards the boy's undergarment, fast, accurate, and ruthless. Only these 3 words could be compared to Ning Xuema's attack. The boy was obviously not prepared. Before he even opened his eyes, the silver needle had already pierced into his undergarment. What Ning Xuema did not expect was that the moment the silver needle touched the boy's undergarment, it was as if it had touched a mill. It instantly shattered and disappeared without a trace. At the crucial moment, the red thread was still powerful. It did not stop and continued to wrap around the boy's body. There was a way. Ning Xuema's movements were extremely fast. When the red thread wrapped around the boy's body, she suddenly jumped out of the water and pounced on the boy like a hungry tiger hunting for its prey. With a plop sound, Ning Xuema landed on the green leaf platform, but there was nothing in her arms. She hurriedly opened her eyes and found that the boy who was originally sitting on the green platform had disappeared. When she pounced down, her arms were clearly about to hug the boy's body. Unexpectedly, when he closed his arms, he only hugged a ball of air. It disappeared just like that. Her red string was clearly wrapped around him. Ning Xuema hurriedly looked at the red thread. One end of the red thread was tied to her little finger, and the other end was wrapped around the ginseng baby. At this moment, the red thread on her finger was still fine, but the other end was submerged in the water. The ginseng baby fell into the water. As expected of someone who had cultivated into a demon. How vigilant! Ning Xuema jumped up and was about to jump into the water. She was not on guard against the platform that was formed by the green leaves. The green leaves suddenly expanded and flew over. Very obviously, the platform wanted to wrap her up like dumpling filling. Needless to say, this was the work of the ginseng baby. Ning Xuema tapped her toes on the platform and leaped up. When the green leaves were about to wrap around her, she flew out. Chapter 165. Her movements could not be described as slow, but the green leaves grew even faster, comparable to lightning. Just as her body was about to break free from the encirclement of the green leaves suddenly grew another 2 feet in the air, and suddenly closed in. Ning Xuema's head was covered in dense green, her head slammed into the leaves. The leaves were obviously soft, but when she bumped into them, she felt a burning pain. Her body fell from above and landed on the green platform below. At this moment, the green leaves around her had completely closed. She felt like she was trapped in a ball of green leaves, like a flower bud wrapped in layers of leaves. She naturally was not willing to be trapped like this. She struggled left and right inside. But these green leaves looked tender, as if they would break with a poke, but in fact they were more flexible than cowhide. No matter if she punched them or cut them with a knife, it was useless. She simply could not open the slightest gap, unable to break free. Not only that, after the green leaves wrapped around her, they began to shrink, squeezing her from all directions. Ning Xuema was wrapped inside. The space was getting smaller and smaller, and gradually she almost could not breathe. She desperately tried to find a way to break out of the encirclement, and did not see the boy standing not far away on the water. The water gently rippled, his silver hair like satin fluttering in the wind. His pair of deep blue eyes, like the waves of the sea, fell on the green flower bud that wrapped around Ning Xuema. A trace of astonishment flashed across his eyes. Someone could break in here? How is that possible? The red thread that Ning Xuema threw out was originally wrapped around his waist, but now it was hooked around his little finger as white as jade. His long eyelashes drooped down, as if he was sensing something. A moment later, he opened his eyes. The astonishment in his eyes deepened. The little girl who broke in here is actually a psychokinesis trash. A trash can break in here, simply defying the natural order. Even rarer than the 8 wonders of the world. If he met such a rare person, he could let her go. Perhaps he could keep her by his side to study, or teach her some martial arts so that her miracle could reach a higher level. But this place does not allow any outsiders to enter, and does not allow outsiders to know. No one can be an exception. So, the boy pursed his thin lips and a faint light flashed across his eyes. His fingers slowly tightened. Following his movements, the green flower bud began to close even faster. Ning Xuema, who was inside, naturally sensed that the green leaves around her were closing faster and faster. At this rate, she would be squeezed into a pile of fertilizer by these green walls in less than a minute. It seemed that the ginseng baby wasn't easy to deal with. She couldn't bear to stab him, but he could bear to squeeze her. Ning Xuema could not help but tug at the red thread between her fingers. This thread was the legendary heavenly silkworm silk, and it was given to her by Ji Yunhuang. She had always kept it on her body like a treasure. Its flexibility was the best in the world, and it was a good treasure for her to escape in times of danger. This time he had spent a lot of effort to tie up this ginseng baby. He knew that ordinary threads were probably useless against this ginseng baby. The red thread became taut as she hooked it. It was obvious that there was still something tied to the other end. The doll had not escaped yet. Is he still in the water? If she could pull him over and restrain him, perhaps she could escape from this damn green ball. Ning Xuema secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Her internal force poured into the thin red thread and she suddenly pulled. Hiss. She let out a low cry. Chapter 166. The other end of the red thread felt like it was tied to a mountain. She did not manage to pull the other party over. Instead, she staggered and her little finger hurt. The thin red thread pierced into her palm, creating a bloody groove. Blood began to drip down like pearls. The boy outside was still hooking his finger on the red thread. Ning Xuema's pull only made him frown slightly. He sensed her strength and his eyes fell on the green ball again. He seemed to be able to see the person inside through the layers of green leaves. Inside, Ning Xuema suddenly had an illusion. She felt a pair of ice-cold eyes sizing her up. This feeling was so clear that it made her body stiffen instantly. Dizun? Dizun came? No, Dizun was still pretending to be an ice sculpture in the palace of Changkong country. It was said that he had to stay for 3 days. It had only been 2 days. He should still be meditating there. How could he come here? Illusion, it must be an illusion. At this moment, her blood finally dripped on the green leaf under her feet. This green leaf was strange. When the blood fell on it, it did not seep out. Instead, it rolled like a pearl. The green leaf suddenly trembled as if it was disgusted by the blood. It shook with all its might, trying to shake the blood out. It did not close up quickly. This green leaf was afraid of her blood. Ning Xuema finally saw a glimmer of hope to survive. She cut her hand with a short knife. In order to make the cut more effective, she made a deep cut. Blood gushed out like a spring and flowed like a stream. Her body spun like a top and she wiped the surrounding walls with her blood-stained hand. The entangled green leaves avoided her. Soon, the green ball was forced to disperse by her blood-stained hand. She finally saw the starry sky again. Almost at the same time, Ning Xuema flew up. Her judgment of the direction was very accurate. She directly pounced on the boy standing in the rippling water. Little ginseng child, let's see where you can run to this time. The moment she escaped, the boy's fingers seemed to be about to form a spell. When he heard her words, he was slightly stunned. At the moment he was stunned, Ning Xuema had already pounced on him. Her movements were as fast as lightning. The boy couldn't dodge in time and was pounced on by her. Splash. The two hugged each other and rolled into the water, creating a huge splash. The baby's skin was smooth and soft like milk chocolate. Ning Xuema was very good at hugging people. Her right arm hugged his upper body, and even his 2 little arms were wrapped tightly around it. Her left arm held his 2 calves so that he couldn't move his limbs. The big one and the small one are rolling in the water and they can't stop for a while. Ning Xuema tries to balance herself with her legs. She hugged him like this. Her face was very close to his little face and their eyes met. The little baby's watery blue eyes were like an intoxicating sea. They were as calm as a frozen lake, but they were also rippling with waves. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Since she was sure that the other party was a ginseng baby, she wanted to take a bite out of it the moment she hugged it. But looking at such a pair of eyes, she couldn't bite it. Her lips rubbed against his face. His face was so tender that it seemed like water could come out with a pinch. When her lips touched it, it was like touching a piece of warm jade. The baby was probably not used to being so close to people, so he struggled in her arms and tilted his head back slightly, trying to avoid her lips. Chapter 167. This little thing still wanted to escape? He still wanted to avoid her? Not a chance. Although Ning Xuema couldn't bring herself to bite him, she didn't mind kissing him. She didn't hold back either. She tightened her arms, lowered her head, and pecked him on his pink lips. So tender. So tender. His little lips were like soft tofu or jelly, as if they would melt in her mouth. There was also an indescribable fragrance. Ning Xuema had interacted with many people in her previous life, but she had never really interacted with babies. She wanted to give him a kiss to show off her sovereignty, but when she held his soft lips in her mouth, she couldn't help but want to take a bite. However, if she took a bite, she would bite off such beautiful lips. Such a beautiful baby wouldn't look good without a mouth. She suddenly felt guilty for destroying a work of art. However, she was really hungry. She caught this ginseng baby to satisfy her appetite. Should she bite him or not? Ning Xuema hesitated for a moment with the baby's mouth in her mouth. The baby in her arms probably felt that she had bad intentions. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and his little hands that were trapped in her arms started to form a spell. However, how smart was Ning Xuema? Since she thought that he was a ginseng baby, she would naturally be on guard against him using any immortal spells. She was especially careful with his little hands. Therefore, when his fingers moved before he could form any spell, his fingers suddenly tightened. Ning Xuema's arms wrapped around his body and grabbed his little hands. Ning Xuema's hands weren't big. They could even be said to be small and delicate. However, compared to this baby's little hands, it was very intimidating. Her hands completely covered his little hands. The baby couldn't form any spells anymore. The baby's eyes flashed. Ning Xuema was still hesitating whether she should bite off his little mouth. Suddenly, she felt a cold sensation between her lips and teeth. His little tongue directly entered her mouth. Ning Xuema was shocked. She instinctively moved her head back and finally let go of his little mouth. She stared at the baby in her arms. He knew how to French kiss at such a young age. He didn't learn well. No, this little kid definitely didn't want to kiss her with his tongue. Instead, he wanted to use his tongue to cast some kind of spell in her mouth. Earlier, when his little tongue touched her tongue, it caused her tongue to go numb for a moment. If she hadn't reacted quickly, her entire mouth would have gone numb, and she might have even choked on a few mouthfuls of water. This little ginseng spirit seemed to be very unwilling to be captured. He tried every possible way to break free from her, but unfortunately she didn't fall for his tricks. Ning Xuema held his hand even tighter. She couldn't avoid touching the red thread on his finger. If it was an ordinary silk thread, it would melt and return to its original color after soaking it in water for a moment. However, this sky silk thread was different. If it was not washed with a special method after being soaked in blood, the blood would always adhere to it, and it would be bright as if it had just been dripped on. His small hand was as white as a lotus root, and the red thread on it was exceptionally conspicuous. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. She remembered that her red thread was wrapped around his waist, but for some reason it was now wrapped around his fingers. Could it be that the red string that tied the ginseng baby would automatically move? Had it moved to the part where she could control him the most? For example, this little finger? The red string on Ning Xuema's hand was also tied to her finger. Coincidentally, it was the same hand that was holding the child's hand. As luck would have it, the two fingers tied to the red string overlapped each other. Chapter 168. Ning Xuema lowered her head and saw it. She was embarrassed. This was like the two fated people tied by Yu Lao's red string. What was she thinking? He was just an ingredient that she caught and she would eat him later. How could he be the fated person? Even if he was a person, he was so small and not even as tall as a garlic sprout. It was impossible for him to be the fated person. She was thinking too much. To be safe, she grabbed the red string floating around and wrapped it around the little guy in her arms. Although this ginseng baby had high magic power, he was still a baby and didn't have much strength. Therefore, after Ning Xuema got close to him and restrained him, he simply stopped struggling. He just looked at her with a pair of blue eyes, slightly pursed his lips, and his expression was calm. His long hair was floating in the water just now, and a few strands were wrapped around Ning Xuema's wrist and shoulder, making her itch. When Ning Xuema wrapped the red string around him, she also wrapped his long hair. This little baby had high magic power and he was a ginseng. His hair might be the whiskers of ginseng and it might be able to wrap around people. It wasn't easy for her to restrain him. She didn't want to fail miserably and be entangled by his long hair. Besides, if it was a 10,000-year-old ginseng, the whiskers of ginseng were also very nourishing. She couldn't lose a single one and waste it. Ning Xuema held him and rolled under the water for a while, then stopped the downward momentum. She paused and wanted to paddle up. She couldn't cook him in the water. If she wanted to eat him, she had to get him ashore and eat him slowly. Why did this baby suddenly become so heavy? She held him as if she was holding a big rock. She couldn't swim up and continued to sink instead. She looked down at the baby in her arms. The baby looked at her expressionlessly, and his red lips were slightly pouted. Was he provoking her? Ning Xuema originally wanted to put the short knife on his neck to threaten him, but now both of her hands were occupied and she couldn't free them. She had an idea and lowered her head, and her red lips were close to the baby's delicate ear. "Little kid, if you play any tricks, I'll bite your ear directly." It was originally inconvenient to speak in the water, but she could still speak with her mouth close to his ear. It was just that her voice was a little strange. After she finished speaking, she even put his earlobe in her mouth and bit it threateningly with her little teeth. The baby's body stiffened for a moment, but its weight suddenly lightened. It was the weight of a normal baby. "That's more like it." Ning Xuema was pleased with herself. She finally let go of his ear and swam upwards. The two of them finally emerged from the water. Ning Xuema let out a sigh of relief. Although she had only been underwater for a short period of time, she had done a lot of things. Now she was really tired. The silvery moonlight shone on the child in his arms, making her appear tender and tender. Looking at her up close, the child's facial features were astonishingly beautiful. She was exquisite and perfect like a crystal doll. Ning Xuema couldn't take her eyes off him. "What do you want?" The child finally spoke. His voice was crisp like a string of crystal wind chimes in the wind, and there was a touch of coldness in his voice. "Why don't you guess?" Ning Xuema smiled at him, revealing 4 sparkling white teeth as she replied with an enigmatic tone. The baby's pair of ocean blue eyes blinked. "I can't guess." "Okay, then you don't have to guess. You'll know in a while. Be good and I'll make you feel better." Ning Xuema smiled as if she was comforting him, and she swam towards the shore. Chapter 169. The child's eyelashes were wet. He pursed his lips and did not speak anymore. Ning Xuema stepped on the water. In fact, she was also paying attention to his movements at all times, afraid that he would do something new. The child probably stopped cursing. His little face was gently pressed against her chest, and he was very obedient. The surface of the lake rippled, and the green leaf platform had disappeared without a trace. Under the moonlight, the surface of the lake was like a mirror. If it were not for the child in her arms, Ning Xuema would have thought that everything was a dream. She quickly swam to the shore and carried the child up. She was so tired that her forehead was covered in sweat. She sat on a big rock by the shore and still hugged the child tightly in her arms, not daring to put him on the ground. Ginseng children should know the earth escape technique. If she put him on the ground, he might disappear with a swoosh. How was she going to eat him? Ning Xuema looked at the child and suddenly understood how Tang Sanzang felt when he ate the ginseng fruit back then. The ginseng fruit that Tang Sanzang obtained looked like a child, but it was not alive. At least it was still a fruit. When he ate it, he could just bite it. But the person in her arms had soft skin, big sparkling eyes, and a small red mouth that could talk and move. She was clearly a little child of the human world. She was so beautiful that even the heavens would be jealous of her. She couldn't bring herself to kiss her. No matter where she bit him, she felt that she was committing a sin. She was not a soft-hearted person. She had killed many people in her life, but she had never killed a child, let alone eat one. It seemed that Jianghu was much more ruthless than her. Sob, sob, sob. Perhaps she should close her eyes and throw him into the pot to stew, but there was no pot or firewood here. Strangely enough, although the lake was surrounded by trees, there was not a single leaf or branch to be found. Unless she walked further away, she raised her head and looked into the distance. In the distance, there were strange-shaped rocks and lush trees. Under the moonlight, they looked mysterious and dangerous. This was the 9th peak. Any animal that came out of it would be enough to keep her busy for half a day. It was better not to provoke them for the time being. Gurgle, gurgle, a soft sound entered their ears. It was Ning Xuema's intestines. "So hungry?" Ning Xuema swallowed her saliva. "Are you hungry?" the child asked again. "Not bad," Ning Xuema said with a straight face. Her eyes fell on his silvery hair that was as smooth as the moonlight. Suddenly she had an idea. She raised her hand and pulled out 2 strands of his hair. Then she looked at them hopefully. Why did she pull his hair? Go. Incantation? The child raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at her. After a while, Ning Xuema's face fell. TV dramas really killed people. She clearly remembered that in a movie she had seen someone pluck out an old ginseng man's beard, and it turned into ginseng whiskers. However, the hair in her hand was still hair, and it didn't seem to have changed at all. Could that be the ginseng elder and this was a child? Whiskers can change, but baby hair can't. Why can't your hair turn into a ginseng beard? Ning Xuema took out a short knife and placed it horizontally on the child's neck. Hurry up and change a few strands. Otherwise I'll eat you. The child's lips twitched. He looked down at the short knife on his neck and then looked at her. You want to eat ginseng? That's right. Hurry up and change them. Ning Xuema pressed the short knife down slightly. Her short knife was also given to her by Ji Yunhuang. It was a sharp blade and was a good knife. It shone with a cold light under the moonlight. Chapter 170. This child's skin was as tender as a lotus root. She really wanted to take a bite but did not want to hurt him. Although the knife was pressed against his neck, it was very measured. The child sighed softly, then let me go, I'll give you the ginseng. She was holding him too tightly, he could not even take his hand away. If I let you go, you'll run away again. Ning Xuema did not let go. You can just come out. The child? He gritted his teeth. Don't worry, I won't run away. If you let go of one of my hands, I can give you 100-year-old ginseng. Ning Xuema was somewhat suspicious. This child was too cunning. Just now he made her suffer a big loss, she had to guard against him. After thinking for a moment, she really let go of one of his hands, the one with the red string. Then hurry up, if you dare to play any tricks, I'll directly cut off your little head. Ning Xuema directly put the knife to his throat, full of threat. The child really did not have any intention of playing any tricks. His little hand gently patted his doo-doo. A thick-looking ginseng emerged. Ning Xuema's eyes lit up. She raised her hand and took the ginseng. The ginseng should really be 100 years old. It had already taken shape. It looked white and plump. There were dozens of whiskers below. Ning Xuema smiled. With this ginseng she can eat to her heart's content and no longer have to go hungry. It seems that the child in her arms is really a ginseng child. Otherwise how can a ginseng appear just by patting his doo-doo? She really picked up a treasure. Is his doo-doo 100 treasures pouch? He can produce ginseng with just a pat, then what about her? Ning Xuema was a person of action. She immediately took action when she thought of something, so she also patted his doo-doo. In the end, she did not manage to pat a shrimp. She did not give up, she simply patted all sides, but did not guard against the fact that she patted a little lower, right between his legs. The child was originally looking at her with a faint smile, but at this moment his expression changed slightly. He raised his fingertips and a spell was instantly formed. A white light flashed in front of Ning Xuema's eyes. It was so dazzling that she closed her eyes subconsciously. Suddenly there was nothing between her arms. She hurriedly opened her eyes. The baby in her arms had disappeared. Fuck, he still managed to escape. Ning Xuema jumped up and hurriedly looked around. Ginseng baby usually used earth escape to escape, but he could only run underground. But the ground around her was covered with grass, and she could not see a decent hole. She looked at the red string tied to her finger. The red string was fluttering in the wind, and the baby on the other end of the red string had long run away. She searched the surrounding grass again, trying to find a stalk of ginseng, but to no avail. She sighed and sat down on the stone again. So what if he ran away? Even if he was in her hands, she didn't know what to do with him. After all, he couldn't bring himself to bite her, and holding her would be a burden. Fortunately, the ginseng he gave her was still there, enough to appease her hunger. She was also afraid that the ginseng child was up to no good, so she first tested it with a silver needle to confirm that it was not poisonous, and then slowly ate it. She was really hungry. A radish-sized ginseng was finished in a moment, finally satisfying her hunger. The baby did not lie to her. The ginseng he gave her was at least 100 years old. Because she had just climbed out of the water and this was the peak of a mountain, the weather was cold. Her body was cold and she almost shivered as she sat there. Chapter 171. But after eating the ginseng, her stomach felt warm and there was a warm current flowing around her body. In a moment, the cold feeling disappeared and there were even beads of sweat on her forehead. She wiped the sweat off her forehead and her heart slightly moved. This ginseng seemed to be more than 100 years old. Otherwise it wouldn't be so effective. She couldn't just eat it like a radish and forget about it after eating it. She had to circulate it and let it play its best role. She looked around and it was quiet all around. Only the sound of the mountain breeze could be heard and no other movement could be heard. She didn't expect this place to be a paradise. She had been ashore for so long but she didn't see the legendary ferocious magical beast. After all, she was alone outside and she was naturally worried about being alone in such a dangerous place. She simply got up and began to move the big stones by the lake. Now that her inner energy had reached a certain level, it wasn't too difficult to move these big stones. She quickly placed the stones one by one to the east and another to the west and arranged them according to a certain pattern. In a short time, she arranged an array. This array was created according to the Chimenduanjia. It was divided into 8 gates and was ever-changing. It could block 100,000 soldiers. She sat in the middle of the array, and with this array as protection, even if the magical beasts came here, they wouldn't be able to get close to her. After everything was arranged, she let out a sigh of relief and sat on a big stone to meditate. She didn't see that on a big tree not far away, the little child's figure appeared again. At this moment, the doo-doo on his body was gone and in its place was a small robe. The white robe was like snow and there were faint dark patterns on it. The big round moon was behind him and the moonlight was like water flowing on his robe. His silver hair and white robe fluttered in the wind. This scene was as beautiful as a painting. Unfortunately, Ning Xuema didn't see it. She had completely entered a meditative state. The tree that the child was standing on was very tall and he could overlook the whole scene. His pair of deep blue eyes sized up the stone array around her and then looked at her who was sitting in the middle of the array. His eyes flashed with a hint of interest. She was setting up an array? This was the first time he saw an array that didn't need psychokinesis to scatter the stones. Did she think that a pile of stones in a disorderly manner would be able to resist the beast here? Even the weakest magical beast would be able to smash these stones into pieces with just a few swipes of its claws. She was still a child after all. She was too naive. His gaze fell on her meditating posture. Ning Xuema was practicing internal strength at this time, so her posture of meditation was also the posture of practicing internal strength. Naturally, it was different from the posture of practicing psychokinesis here. His eyesight was amazing. Ning Xuema was drenched and her clothes stuck to her body. He could see the subtle changes in her skin and judge the flow of qi in her body. A strange cultivation method, a strange aura, and a strange girl. He had lived for so many years, but he had never seen such a strange girl. Ning Xuema's inner energy circulated faster and faster, and the heat generated caused her clothes to dry at a speed visible to the naked eye. White steam rose from the top of her head. From afar, it looked like there was a steamer on her head. The little child stared at the steamer above her head with great interest, even forgetting about his own cultivation. After looking for a while, his eyes flashed slightly. He gently plucked a wide leaf. After a few folds, he actually plucked out a tiger. He made a gesture with his fingertips and pointed at the green leaf tiger. He threw it into the array. Chapter 172. He made a hand seal with his fingertips and pointed at the green leaf tiger. He threw it into the array, a gust of wind blew past, and the green leaf tiger turned into a colorful tiger. Its roar shook the heavens and earth. Ning Xuema was startled by the tiger's roar. She opened her eyes and looked outside the array. Then she suddenly jumped up. What a big tiger. It was twice as big as the Siberian tiger she had seen before. What surprised her the most was that this tiger had green fur. She had seen white tigers, snow tigers, and tigers with yellow and black stripes, but this was the first time she saw a tiger with emerald green fur. It was indeed a perverted animal in a perverted world. This was probably a unique species in the ninth peak. Ning Xuema stared at the tiger's figure that flashed through the array from time to time. She clenched the dagger in her hand tightly. Maybe this was not a tiger but the legendary Qiongqi? Qiongqi in the game had a weird color. However, Qiongqi seemed to have wings but this guy did not. Also, its eyes were green and bright. Under the moonlight, they looked like green will-o'-the-wisps. This tiger landed in the stone array. It seemed to have smelled Ning Xuema's scent immediately. It immediately roared and pounced in Ning Xuema's direction. His body was huge but its body was very agile. It jumped over a 2-foot-tall rock. It jumped onto a big rock, bent down, and pounced toward Ning Xuema who was in the center of the array. Bang! With a loud sound, it collided with a large rock that appeared out of thin air. It was obviously not prepared. It fell to the ground with a thud. It shook its head and looked in front of it in surprise. When it pounced, it did not see the rock. How did it crash into it? It looked at its surroundings again. The scenery had changed. When it landed on the ground, it saw scattered boulders. The largest boulder was only 2 feet tall. It had only pounced for a while but the surrounding rocks grew bigger. Each of them was 4 to 5 feet tall and stood around it. It was sandwiched in the middle and there was no way out. Roar! Roar! The tiger was enraged. Its body frequently leaped up but it frequently hit its head. There were many places where it looked like an open space, but when it jumped over, it would always hit a big rock that appeared out of nowhere. The collision made it see stars and it was furious. Of course, because of its extraordinary strength, the large rocks that were hit by it did not fare any better and were directly smashed into pieces. Thus, the boy hidden in the leaves on the tree saw the following scene. The tiger that he had put down was bumping around in the seemingly fragile stone formation. In his opinion, it was obvious that it would be able to catch Ning Xuema with its mouth and complete the mission after leaping over 2 more stones. However, the stupid tiger had taken a detour and foolishly used its big head to hit the stones. It was so angry that it was stamping with rage. Idiot! The boy didn't want to see its stupid appearance anymore, so he decided not to look at it. Instead, he looked at the stone array again. Without the support of psychokinesis, it was just an ordinary stone placed there. Could it be that it had a hallucinogenic effect? The stone array looked ordinary, but there was a kind of aura in the array. This aura was invisible, but it was inexplicably frightening. His gaze swept across every big rock, and the expression in his eyes changed from indifference to concentration. It was the first time he had seen this kind of array, and he could not help but take a few more glances. There were too few things in this world that could attract his attention. However, this little girl had broken the rules several times, which aroused his interest. Chapter 173. Even he had never seen or heard of the kind of formations that she was cultivating in. Where did she learn all of this from? He crossed his arms and continued to watch. Although the little girl's array was strange and powerful, these stones were just ordinary stones. They were constantly smashed into pieces by the green tiger, and the number of stones in the array was decreasing. Once the number of stones decreased to a certain point, the array would be broken. Without the array, the little girl would have to confront the green tiger directly. What would she do then? What kind of surprise tactic would he use to achieve victory? Inside the array, Ning Xuema was cursing in her heart. This green tiger is too abnormal. Its head was harder than a stone. If she let it continue to smash into the stones, it would be right in front of her in less than an hour. She had to get rid of it before the array was broken. She leaped up and her palms were like blooming lotuses. She slammed her palms on every stone around her. Her movements were agile and she moved around the array as if she was flying. Suddenly she flashed past the green tiger. The green tiger subconsciously slammed its paw, but it only hit a stone. The stone was smashed into pieces under its paw, but the girl hid behind another stone and waved at it. Green hair, come and catch me. The girl smiled like a flower, but the green tiger did not have any pity for her. It roared and pounced on her again. Bang! Its head crashed into another stone. The stone was smashed into pieces, but a few rays of cold light shot out from the cracks of the stone and pierced into its head. The green tiger staggered backward, but it did not fall. It only shook its head and continued to smash into the array. Ning Xuema was speechless. The silver needles she had placed in the cracks of the stone were highly poisonous. Even a dinosaur would be knocked over in an instant. She did not expect that the green tiger would be fine. This tiger was also resistant to poison? It was indeed abnormal. In the 9th summit, Ning Xuema placed a few more poisons in the stones. She even used the strongest anesthetic to lure the green tiger to smash into the stones. Every poisonous needle shot into the green tiger's head, but it did not cause any harm to the green tiger. The green tiger was still as majestic as ever, and it was even more energetic when it hit the rocks. Inside the array, stone fragments flew everywhere and dust filled the air. Ning Xuema, who was inside the array, was choked to the point of having a headache. This green tiger didn't seem to be afraid of any poison. She couldn't waste her poison needles anymore. It seemed like she had to think of another way. Her gaze fell upon the green tiger's lush green fur, and her heart suddenly stirred. This fellow was so green, was it of the wood attribute? Perhaps it was afraid of fire? She rummaged through her clothes and found a match. She lit it and took the risk to dash out. She flashed in front of the green tiger. The green tiger suddenly retreated and swiped at her with its paw. If it weren't for Ning Xuema's quick reflexes, her hand would have been slapped off. But the wind from the green tiger still extinguished the fire from the match. Ning Xuema didn't want to fight it head-on, so she left after giving it a try. Relying on the large stones, she once again escaped from the green tiger's pursuit. This fellow was most likely afraid of fire. Ning Xuema came to this conclusion. There was a big tree in her array. It was luxuriant and tall. Ning Xuema was as agile as a monkey. She quickly climbed up the tree and broke off a branch. The little boy in white was watching with great interest on another big tree. When he saw her break off a lush green branch, The corners of his lips curled up slightly. He was very smart and had already seen through Ning Xuema's intention. She must have seen that the green tiger was afraid of fire and wanted to make a torch. Chapter 174. However, the tree trunk was growing just right. It was juicy and lush with green leaves. She only had a match in her hand. How could she light it? Was this little girl muddle-headed from being forced into a corner? The little boy looked refreshed as he watched. She actually attacked him when he was at his weakest and most powerless. She even interrupted his cultivation and caused his cultivation this year to be in vain. She even bit him. This was the price she had to pay for offending him. If it was someone else who offended him like this, they would have turned into ashes long ago. Actually, he still had some mercy for her. The little boy in white leaned against the tree lazily. He looked down at Ning Xuema, who was busying herself, and suddenly felt that his long life was not so boring anymore. How would she start a fire? If she had fire psychokinesis, it would not be difficult. Usually, he would be able to set the surrounding trees on fire with a wave of his sleeve. However, this girl was obviously a psychokinesis trash. Before he could finish his thought, he suddenly saw Ning Xuema's small hand holding onto the tree trunk in her hand. She closed her eyes slightly and was in the middle of channeling her energy. After a while, under the little boy's surprised gaze, the tree trunk turned yellow and dried up at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. The little boy suddenly narrowed his eyes. What kind of martial arts was this? It was as if this little girl used evil arts to absorb all the vitality of the tree trunk. This kind of martial arts? His handsome little face showed a trace of seriousness. He slowly straightened his body that was leaning against the tree trunk, and a trace of deep thought flashed across his eyes. Ning Xuema was actually just experimenting. She had once absorbed all the spiritual energy from a crystal and turned it into a dried rod. Therefore, she used the same internal energy on the tree trunk as a last resort. As expected, it also turned into a dried rod. The green leaves that were originally on the dried rod had now turned into dried leaves. She used a match to light it up. After a while, a torch was already burning in her hand. When the fire was strong enough, she flew up again, and the blazing torch was like a burning sword, burning towards the body of the green tiger that was charging towards her. Boom! The green tiger couldn't dodge in time, and its fur began to burn as if it had been splashed with oil. Oh whoa! The green tiger raised its head and let out a mournful howl. Its entire body collapsed like a piece of paper and was burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. Ning Xuema, she stared blankly at the small pile of ashes on the ground. She had already seen that this tiger was afraid of fire, but she did not expect it to be so afraid of fire. She thought that she would be able to get a few pieces of roasted tiger meat. There was only the smell of burnt leaves in the air. There was no meat aroma as she expected, and there was no psychokinesis crystal left behind by the tiger. There was only one possibility for such a situation to occur. This was not a real tiger but a transformation of some kind of Dao technique. The ginseng baby. It seemed like that little thing hadn't run away and was still scheming against her. This little thing was quite vengeful. It didn't want to leave even after it ran away from her. It seemed like it was still unwilling to give up and was watching from the dark. Ning Xuema's eyes slightly flashed as she circled around the place where the green tiger disappeared. Suddenly, she staggered and raised her hand to look at her palm. Her palm was still dripping with blood. A silver needle had been stabbed into her flesh at a slanted angle. Under the moonlight, the needle shone faintly. Damn it! She cursed under her breath. She raised her hand to pull out the silver needle and took out a small bottle. It seemed like she wanted to apply the medicine herself, but her fingers were trembling and she couldn't pour out the powder. Suddenly, her legs gave way and she fell straight down. Chapter 175. With a loud bang, her head hit a large rock. Her body trembled for a moment before she stopped moving. The boy in white was speechless. His long eyelashes fluttered as he looked at Ning Xuema, who was lying there motionless, as if she had been poisoned by her own poison. He didn't react for a long time. The little girl's head must have been injured. There was a pool of blood slowly forming under her head. The blood was dark purple. It was obvious that she had been poisoned. After all, the little girl was still young. She had hidden poison all over her body and had just gone through such a battle. It was very likely that she had been accidentally injured by her own poison needles. His gaze fell on the pool of blood. Judging from the color of the blood, the little girl had been poisoned quite severely. Would she die here? He crossed his arms and stared at Ning Xuema for a full quarter of an hour. Ning Xuema was still lying there motionless. The wind blew her clothes, making her curled-up body look lonely and weak. It was as if a few more gusts of wind would blow her away. The boy in white watched for a long time. Suddenly he used a leaf to fold a wolf and threw it down. It landed beside Ning Xuema and turned into a mighty and majestic wolf. That big wolf circled around Ning Xuema, huffing and puffing as it sniffed and sniffed. Suddenly, it bared its sharp fangs and bit Ning Xuema's calf. Fresh blood flowed out. The color of the blood was also dark purple. The wolf raised its head and howled. The howl echoed throughout the mountain. Ning Xuema was still lying there motionless. It seemed that the little girl had really fainted. The white-clothed boy's figure moved. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Ning Xuema and flicked his finger at the wolf. In the blink of an eye, the wolf turned back into a green leaf. He lowered his head and looked at Ning Xuema. He reached out his small hand and wanted to turn her over to take a look. At that moment, an unforeseen event happened. Ning Xuema's body suddenly leapt up like lightning, directly pouncing on the white-clothed boy. Her movements were abnormally fast, and her explosive power was extremely strong. This fierce pounce was comparable to the speed of light. The boy couldn't dodge in time and was pounced on by her. He was less than a meter tall, and Ning Xuema was a giant compared to him. He couldn't bear the weight of Ning Xuema's entire body. With a plop sound, he was directly pushed to the ground. Unfortunately, the back of his head also knocked against a piece of bluestone, causing him to see stars. At the same time, he felt a sudden chill, pain and numbness in the joints of his limbs. Several silver needles had pierced into his body. His vision darkened and his entire body went numb. He only had time to say one thing: "If you kill me, you won't be able to leave the 9th summit." Then he fainted. Ning Xuema, the dagger in her hand, was about to stab into the boy's heart, but his last sentence made her stop. She raised her hand and swallowed a pill. After panting for a moment, she lowered her eyes and looked at the little rascal that was firmly pressed under her body. She tilted her head and thought for a moment. Then she took out all the silk threads she had on her. She tied the little guy up tightly. She had indeed pretended to be poisoned just to attract the little guy down. In order to make it look real, she had specially taken a poison pill. This kind of poison wouldn't take a person's life, but it would cause the blood vessels in the body to hurt a little. More importantly, this kind of poison would cause the blood to turn black and purple, as if it was highly toxic. This little ginseng child was really extraordinarily cautious. He even brought a wolf down to test her. Chapter 176. If it weren't for her strong mental strength and high endurance, she would have jumped up the moment the wolf circled around her. But she was also prepared. If the wolf really bit her vital parts, she would jump up and fight back. Fortunately, the boy didn't seem to want to take her life directly, so the wolf didn't bite her vital parts. She secretly gritted her teeth and endured it for a while. She managed to endure it. It was not until the boy came down and came to her side that she chose the best time to attack and succeeded in one fell swoop. It seems that this ginseng child's technique is a little stronger, his speed is a little faster, but his physical strength is average. Ning Xuema suffered such a big loss in the hands of this boy. Naturally she would not be polite. Once she pounced on him, she would immediately use several anesthetic needles to paralyze him first. She originally wanted to end him. A ginseng child is a great tonic. If she killed him, perhaps he would not be in the form of a child but in the form of a ginseng, then she would not taste too bloody. But the child's last sentence made her pause. Looking at the child's exquisite facial features, she was a little hesitant to kill him. Actually, she wasn't intimidated by his last sentence. Using Ning Xuema's own words, she wasn't someone who was scared. At this moment, her eyes fell on the back of the child's head, where bright red blood was gushing out. She subconsciously dipped her finger in it and brought it to her nose to smell it. Damn, does it have to be so realistic? A ginseng child can bleed, and the smell of the blood is no different from human blood. She looked again at the flower-like cinnabar mole between the child's eyebrows. A question finally emerged in her mind. Is this guy really a ginseng child? What if this cinnabar mole just happens to look like a ginseng flower? However, even if he's not a ginseng child, he shouldn't be a human, right? Whose child would be able to run all the way here? And he has such a good magical power that can turn beans into soldiers. He can fold something and turn it into a real animal. It's a bit like a Taoist technique. This little guy was obviously an expert. It was said that when a Taoist reached a certain level of cultivation, they could cultivate a nascent soul. The nascent soul could leave the body. Could this little kid be the nascent soul of some great god? Ning Shuima is shocked by her own deduction. She has read a lot of books about cultivation in this world, but there seems to be no such thing as yuanying. The concept of nascent soul was only mentioned in the Taoist scriptures of her own world. Furthermore, the book also said that although the nascent soul cultivated by a Taoist master was the size of a 1 or 2-year-old boy, its appearance would still be the original appearance. It was just that its size had shrunk by several sizes. On the other hand, this one had the appearance of a standard little doll. Her eyes were watery and tender, making people want to hug and kiss her. It took a certain amount of courage to kill him and eat his meat. She lowered her eyes to look at him again. Diske, he had actually changed his clothes in such a short time. He was no longer wearing a doo-doo. This white robe was quite nice and it made his small face look even better. This little doll reminded her of Hubba in Monster Hunt for no reason. Hubba didn't look like a human. It was just a little cute, but it was likable and pitiful and people couldn't bear to hurt it. Moreover, this little doll in front of her has the appearance of a standard human. Beautiful dolls are really likable even if they know that he's a demon. When the little doll woke up, he found himself tied up like a dumpling and placed on a big rock. Chapter 177. When the baby woke up, he found himself tied up like a dumpling and placed on a big rock. Ning Shuima was very professional when it came to tying people up. Not only did she tie up his limbs, but she also tied up his fingers one by one. He couldn't even move his fingers, let alone make a spell. Ning Shuima was sitting not far away from him. There was a bonfire in front of her, and the blazing bonfire illuminated her little face. She seemed to have noticed that he had woken up, so she turned around and smiled at him. Under the moonlight, her 4 little white teeth were shining. "Little guy, how do you choose to die? Should I roast you or stew you?" The baby didn't struggle. He was silent for a moment. "Roasting is not nutritious, stewing is nutritious, but you don't have a pot." Ning Shuima was speechless. He was telling the truth. However, this baby was too calm. Was he sure that she wouldn't kill him? She was a little unhappy. She walked over and spun the knife in her hand. "Roasting is not nutritious, but it's better than not eating at all. I'll just skewer you and roast you. I've roasted a suckling pig before and it was delicious. I think roasting a ginseng baby won't be too bad." The baby pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Ning Shuima squatted in front of him and patted him with the handle of the knife. She smiled kindly. "What do you think? Do you have any better suggestions? If not, we'll happily decide." The baby stared at her face with a pair of deep blue eyes. She looked at him with a smile, and there was a pair of dimples on each of her cheeks. She looked pure and kind and even a little childish, but she was actually a cunning little devil. The baby's eyes were too deep, like the unfathomable deep sea. Ning Shuima looked at him for a moment, and her heart skipped a beat. She coughed and looked away. He pointed the knife at his little face and said, "Why don't I cut off 2 pieces of your pretty little face and roast them?" The little child's face was so delicate that it could be broken by blowing on it. When Ning Shuima's knife got a bit closer to his face, the little child subconsciously dodged, causing her knife to graze his face. Unexpectedly, drops of blood started to flow down his face. Ning Shuima was slightly taken aback. She quickly moved the knife back a little. If such a pretty little face was really scratched, it would be ugly. What a sin. The child did not seem to care about the wound on his face. His eyes flashed with a hint of a smile as he looked at her. That smile was very faint, so faint that Ning Shuima, who had been looking at him all this time, did not notice it. "Young lady." He opened his mouth and his words were straightforward. "Let me go and I will send you out of the 9th summit. Only a fool would believe you." Ning Shuima sat down on the spot. "Last time you also said that you wouldn't run. In the end you disappeared in the blink of an eye. You even schemed against me behind my back. Last time you were too bold. You actually took liberties with me." Ning Shuima finally remembered that last time when she patted his doo-doo, she seemed to have accidentally patted between his legs. She coughed and smiled indifferently. She glanced at his lower body with ill intentions. "You're just a little bean. What's there to take liberties with? Is that thing as big as a bean sprout?" The baby, this little girl's skin is too thick. He had lived for so many years, and this was the first time he saw such a thick-skinned little girl. Since he met this little girl, it seemed that there were several firsts. Chapter 178. This was the first time someone had broken through the array he had set up in the lake. It was also the first time he had been caught by someone. Furthermore, he was caught by a useless little girl. He had been through so many storms and waves, but he had actually failed miserably, not to mention others. Even he himself felt that it was a little funny. He glanced at her. In order to trick him, this little girl had really put in a lot of effort just now. There was still an egg-sized bruise on her forehead, which looked a little scary. Fortunately, this little girl liked to be clean, so she had already washed off the bloodstains on her forehead. Her whole face was white and clean, which was very pleasing to the eye. As long as you don't touch me again, I won't run away. Without my help, you won't be able to go down the 9th peak. At the latest, you will be exposed to all kinds of magical beasts when the sun rises. Even if there are 10 of you, you will still be torn to pieces. They won't be as polite to you as I am. You're being polite to me? Ning Xuema snorted. You let the tiger and wolf bite me. If she wasn't smart enough, she would have been torn to pieces by the green tiger. They won't really hurt you. The boy slowly said, look at the place where your leg was bitten. Ning Xuema lowered her head and looked at the leg that was bitten by the wolf. Suddenly she was stunned. The part of her leg that had been bitten looked bloody. There was a large laceration and she had treated it herself. However, it only stopped the bleeding and she applied the self-made medicine. No matter how effective her medicine was, it was impossible for the wound to disappear in the blink of an eye. But now she couldn't see any wounds on her leg, not even a small scar. Moreover, she couldn't feel any pain. You used an illusion to scare me just now? Ning Xuema put down her pants and her tone was much better. It seemed that this little guy didn't really want to kill her just now. The little doll didn't answer her nonsense. Instead, she asked, can you trust me now? You didn't really hurt me just now, but it doesn't mean that you won't now. You're too cunning, I'm worried. Ning Xuema was straightforward and directly expressed her concerns. You're a cunning little girl, all right? The child pursed his thin lips and his voice became even fainter. There are still 6 hours before dawn. After 6 hours, the enchantment here will disappear. If you don't believe me, then just wait to be eaten by the magical beasts on this mountain. There was a legendary wizardry barrier here. Ning Xuema couldn't help but look around. The lake was like a mirror, and the shadows of the surrounding mountains were reflected in the lake. Together with the round moon in the sky, it was as beautiful as a fairyland. Ever since she entered the lake, other than the illusionary shadows she saw at the beginning, she did not see any magical beasts. It was not as dangerous as the legend said. Could it be because of the barrier? You set up this barrier? The baby closed his eyes and didn't answer. Ning Xuema thought for a moment, then suddenly hugged him and said, come down the mountain with me now. In the end, she was still worried about this little fellow. Didn't he have a way to deal with all kinds of magical beasts? Then she would take him and run away. If there was any danger, he would tell her automatically. Little boy, you and I are in the same boat now. I can't run away and I can't jump away from you. If there is any danger, you have to tell me. Otherwise, I'll be eaten by the magical beasts and you'll become their snack. She carried him and walked along the shore to the shortest mountain. The little boy was speechless. Chapter 179. That little child. He was tied up and lying in her arms. His posture was a little strange, but he didn't seem to care. He just looked at her and said, have you always been so distrustful of people? This little girl was more than cautious when it came to people and things. Ning Xuema pursed her lips. As a secret agent, it was indeed difficult to trust anyone except for her own life and death companions. Because the price of trusting someone was only one word, death. That little child's lips twitched slightly. He stared at her face and said, how can a declining young miss of a marquee mansion be so scheming? Ning Xuema's arms stiffened slightly. She looked at him and asked, you know my identity? That little child answered casually, I know. How did he know? Wasn't he a ginseng child who grew up in the mountains? Ning Xuema's eyes flashed with suspicion. That little child seemed to understand her doubts. He smiled and said, don't you think that I'm a ginseng immortal? Since I'm an immortal, I can predict. Ning Xuema smiled. She smiled with evil intentions and said, then you can predict when I'll stew you in the pot? That little child. He shut his mouth. Although Ning Xuema was carrying someone, she still walked very fast in order to escape. She climbed the mountain very professionally. The trees on the mountain were a little like the trees in the south. The trunks were thick and the crowns were huge. Countless aerial roots hung down from the crowns and pierced into the ground. It was like countless dragons sucking water. It was a magnificent sight. These trees were similar in appearance. They all had palm-sized leaves. Each leaf grew upwards and was dense. The moonlight was like water, splashing down and shining on these leaves, shining with a faint silver light. This small mountain was densely packed with such trees. Ning Xuema walked among them as if she was walking in a palm forest. That feeling was indescribably strange. What kind of trees are these? Ning Xuema asked. The tree was full of hands and it felt so scary. That child's long eyelashes were closed on his face, as if he was already asleep. He didn't have any intention to answer. It seemed like little Wimp was still angry that she didn't untie him and was still angry at her. Ning Xuema stopped asking him and continued to walk forward. Fortunately, although the leaves of these trees looked strange, there was nothing strange about them. They did not emit poisonous gas, nor did they eat people like the cannibal trees. Below the tree were jagged mountain rocks. These rocks looked like shale and were stacked in layers. It was a little uncomfortable to step on them. Ning Xuema was actually a little puzzled. Generally, coniferous forests grew on high mountains, especially those that grew in the crevices of rocks. Most of them were pine and cypress. However, the trees here had so many leaves and so many aerial roots. They were clearly the characteristics of a tropical rainforest. The climate here was cool and dry, so it shouldn't be suitable for such trees to grow. This strange place even defied the laws of nature. She complained in her heart as she walked. It was difficult to walk on the rugged ground, and she accidentally kicked the aerial root of a big tree. This aerial root was relatively small, and when it was broken by her kick, a faint transparent liquid actually flowed out from it. Ning Xuema was a little thirsty from walking, so when she saw the liquid, she wanted to drink it to replenish her energy. She was still very cautious. She first used a silver needle to test it. After confirming that it wasn't poisonous, she then picked up the aerial root and drank it. This liquid was actually very sweet. After drinking the first mouthful, she wanted to drink a second mouthful. In just a short moment, the liquid in the aerial root was completely sucked dry. Chapter 180. She still wanted more, so she took out a short knife and wanted to cut open another aerial root to drink. With your physique you can only drink this much. If you drink more it will be harmful to you, the boy suddenly said. Ning Xuema glanced at him with a doubtful look. She was only half full and the more she drank the more she wanted to drink more. You can choose not to believe me, but don't blame me for not reminding you if you drink until you vomit blood, the boy said lightly and closed his eyes again. How could she vomit blood after drinking such sweet water? It was just liquid from the aerial roots, not ginseng, deer antler, or Ganoderma lucidum. Why would she vomit blood after drinking it? Ning Xuema looked at the aerial roots again and suddenly had an idea. The top of the aerial roots were connected to the densest part of the leaves, and the stalks of the leaves were basically growing near the aerial roots. She raised her head and looked at the moon in the sky. Could it be that the palm-shaped leaves were absorbing the essence of the moon? Then, the essence would be transferred to the aerial roots, and the aerial roots would be inserted into the cracks of the rocks. Moreover, the aerial roots were all facing the same direction. Ning Xuemo remembered that when she first entered the forest, she saw a thin stream outside the forest. The stream was obviously flowing towards the big lake. I know. The water in the big lake was formed by the water from the aerial roots. The boy's eyelashes moved slightly, but he didn't say anything. Ning Xuemo was still a little regretful. If I had known, I would have drunk more water from the big lake. The trees on each mountain were transferring the essence of the moon into the big lake. The big lake was simply a nourishing soup. No wonder you had to sit there and absorb the nutrients. She thought of the layers of green platforms again. A question flashed through her mind. Was there any ginseng that grew in water? The big green platform didn't look like ginseng leaves. She couldn't help but reach out and touch the boy's tender face. No wonder you are so beautiful and your skin is so smooth. It is nourished by the essence of the sun and the moon. The boy's eyebrows twitched slightly, but he was too lazy to open his eyes. His little mouth was slightly closed and under the moonlight, it looked like a crystal clear flower with dew. Ning Xuema couldn't help but lower her head and kiss his lips again. The child's body stiffened slightly. Before he could do anything, Ning Xuema raised her head and said with a smile, "It tastes good." As expected of someone who grew up absorbing the essence of the sun and moon. The small child. The ice lake in his eyes seemed to crack a little. Do you always like to kiss strange men? His voice seemed to carry a chill. He had already been kissed by her twice in such a short period of time. Little fellow, you're wrong. Firstly, you and I are not strangers. Secondly, and most importantly, you're not a man yet. Ning Xuemo raised her hand and pinched his face. You're just a little bean, a baby. You can't even be considered a boy. In our time, everyone was close to children. Your era? Which era? The child had obviously caught on to her words. Ning Xuemo didn't take it to heart. She said casually, it's the era I lived in my previous life. It was very civilized and advanced. Ning Xuemo wasn't a talkative person, but she had been trapped in the mountains for so long. It was rare for her to meet someone she could talk to. This child probably didn't come out often and wouldn't reveal her secret. She briefly talked about the civilization of her era, the scenery, the system, the weapons, the mobile phone, the internet. The more she talked, the more she missed it. She didn't feel anything when she was in that era, but once she left, she couldn't bear to leave. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.